thank you everyone to be involved in this workshop. It's an honor for me to chair this workshop as part of a series of symposia devoted to promoting the establishment of a large synchrotron facility in the Greater Caribbean. As you can see on the webpage, the first symposium took place in Colombia on Monday, followed by Jamaica, and tomorrow it will continue in Mexico, culminating this week in El Salvador. These symposia are part of the Semana de la Ciencia organized by the Dominican Republic, and the series will conclude there next Monday. We have focused this workshop in showing the experience of Latin American researchers in European synchrotron facilities. Please note that this symposium is organized to allow room for questions and comments at the end of each talk. If you have any question, I think the best is you kindly raise your hand. You have the hand icon here in Teams, and we will establish an orderly process for addressing all the questions and comments that you have. Now we are going to start with the perfect example of success in the radiation, in the synchrotron radiation field. It's a pleasure to me to introduce the Dr. Gemma Martinez Criado. For me, it's Gemma. Is the current Director of Research for Condensed Matter and Physical and Material Sciences at the ESRF, at the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility. Gemma is a Spanish-Cuban researcher and my former boss, I have to say. Her career is a source of pride for all of us who know how hardworking she is. Please, Gemma.
Thank you so much. I think that I actually don't deserve such a. Thank you so much, really. Let me just share. Is share already or not? Not really. I tried, but it didn't work. Okay. It's okay?
Perfect. It's working perfectly.
Thank you so much, Juan Angel. Really, it's a pleasure to meet you all here. Thank you for the invitation. I am really happy to have this unique time with all of you. I'm going to talk about the ESRF, in particular, the extremely brilliant source, the last upgrade of the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility. I'm trying to give you an overview of what is going on today at the ESRF with a couple of examples. However, you will have anyway the time to see deeply, some examples with Gaston, high pressure science, and also Iran, environmental science. So what I'm going to do is just to present an overview. And for those who are not familiar, the ESRF is located in Grenoble, between two rivers. And as you see, there are many other European facilities and University of Grenoble, Commissariat d'Energie Atomique. So there's a quite important ecosystem of research and education. The ESRF is an European facility paid by 13 member states and 8 associated countries. The idea is just to not only to bring together all the nations, but to try to keep X-ray synchrotron radiation science at the cutting edge, building and operating high energy generation high energy synchrotron radiation source. There are around 10,000 visitors every year. Among their visitors, there are 4 Nobel Prizes, 2,000 scientific, more or less, publications every year, and 30% of the research is carried out with industrial partners. So the idea is just to target different subjects, mostly aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and health and materials and innovation, energy transition, planetary science, environmental sciences, all the most important topics. The ESRF started in 1994. Then there was a first phase of the upgrade that started by 2009, and the second phase which finished in August 2022. So in February, by today we are running more than 2 years the EBS, the extremely brilliant source. And we must say that it's going quite well. It Here you have just basically a split in a view graph with the first and second phase. As you see, the ESRS upgrade phase 1 includes the upgrade of 19 beamlines and also the study of the new feasibility, a new storage ring. I mean, it was a feasibility study. And then the second phase start by 2015 till this year, 2023, involve not only a new machine, well, a storage ring, but also 4 new beamlines, detector development plan. I am not going to talk about it, but it's included, and also a data strategy implementation plan. So it was in total around $500 million investment. And as I say, in total, if you just include the phase 1, there's around 27 beamlines upgraded. New affairs of a kind, low emittance, high brilliance X-ray source, also with an important energy saving, around 20%, actually more than 16, because of the magnets, also the cooling system, the lighting system, and all the conditioning. So in total, we have, if we have a look to the lattice, here you have just a comparison. As you can see that the extreme brilliance source is a hybrid multi-band achromat lattice, where the number of dipoles and sextuples and quadruples have increased. So it's a by far more crowded setup. And the emittance, thanks to this frequency of magnets, could improve by factor 100. So, however, we losing space. I mean, we went from 5 meters, I mean, to reduce by 2 meters the storage sections. So in total, at the level of the beamlines, we have, important increase in the brilliance, reduction by factor 100 in emittance, horizontal emittance, and an improve a factor 30 of the transversal coherence. So we have, as you see, a round beam right now. And this allows us to go to multi-scale from millimeters to nanometers to improve our pump prof experiments with better time resolutions, better extremes conditions, capabilities in terms of energy resolution, sensitivity, throughput, selectivity. And today, machine learning algorithms they are applying in different sectors. I mean, at the level of the beamline automation, also data analysis, and data processing, and so on. So this machine has been inspiration for many other upgrades all over the world. So there's a few already planned, others under constructions and searching for money to have the upgrade. So today, this is a portfolio of beamlines. In total, there are 44 beamlines, including the CRG, the one belonging to the national countries, member states. So I'm just going to focus in the ones that they are on the constructions. I mean, the yellow ones, what we call EVSL projects, and the refurbishment. I mean, the ones that they are upgraded within the last few years. So there are a couple of beamlines. ID17, which is the medical beamline, is on hold. There should be a workshop soon to decide the next beamline development. And then there is on the construction a second cryo-EM. So that's why they are in red. So here you have the beamlines that today they are on the construction. As you see, there are 4 streaming brilliance or beamlines. ID18 for coherent applications, profiting from the EBS, is on the construction and should be open to the user in July 2025. ID3, EBSL2, is a hard X-ray microscopy based in dark field. It's like transmission electron microscope but applied to X-ray, and is on the construction, and it should be open to users next year, March 2024. High throughput large field phase contrast tomography is operational. However, today they are they are receiving the main part of the large sample stage. So it's operational with the smaller one. ID29, EBSL8, it's a serial macromolecular crystallography for time resolved MX, and it's operational since September 2022. And then we have 4 beamlines on the refurbishment. The nuclear resonance scattering ID14, which is actually today in ID18, and is planning to be moved to ID14 by the end of the year. It should be open to the users in February 24. ID21 is upgraded with a new double crystal monochromator. ID24 is operational since February this year. ID26 is on the refurbished with a new double crystal monochromator. So going through all of them quickly, because there's no time, coherent beamline is, let's say, oriented to mesoscale structure and dynamics for high resolution 3D imaging, time results, grounded system. And the beamline, as I say, is on the construction. It's a satellite building. It's based on CDI, X-ray photocorrelation spectroscopy. Here you have a couple of examples. I will not go into the detail, but basically using the coherence that has increased quite a lot in ID10, which is a shorter beamline and is the, let's say, the pilot beamline of ID18. It has been possible to study the protein dynamics in concentrated solutions and study the gauge effects. This is the curve that you see here. This is the solubility as a function of the solution protein concentration. Also, for CDI coherent diffraction image, it's possible to get objects, 3D objects in nanoscale. So the beamline is on the construction. Here you have the satellite building. This is just a recreation. Right now, what you have there are the trucks that they are trying. I mean, there is the civil work going on right now. Then we have EVSL2. ID3 is for 3D strain maps with 100 nanometer resolution. It's oriented to metallurgy, to ceramics, biomaterials, functional materials. And the beamline, as I say, is based on dark field X-ray microscopy for getting the grain maps and strains at the length scale of the nanometer up to millimeter, with time resolution in the length, in the regime of seconds and minutes. The beamline is on the construction. Here you have a picture right now of the new experimental hatch where the stability of the temperature has been reached. And as usual, I don't know if you remember the what we call green yellow paper. So this is the radiation test of the optics that was successfully done in May at the beginning of this month. And as I say, it's on the commissioning. Will start in September and should be open in March 2024. Then we have the high throughput large field phase contrast tomography beamline for biomedical imaging, paleontology, industrial applications in aerospace, material science, geology. So it's a quite versatile beamline. The building has been built with the support from Schanz Zuckerberg Initiative, also the Fraunhofer and the UCL. So the beamline is operational, as I say, but the large volume, the large sample state is not yet operational. In principle, it should handle samples with 2.5 meters size and 300 kilograms. So the idea is just to reach the full body. Here you have the test of this large sample stage. So it's really massive, the colossal sample stage for tomography. So there's a rotation included, with micrometer precision. This is the rotation part of the sample stage. Then we have the ID29 EVSL8 for serial macromolecular crystallography. Is oriented to time resolve MX for drug designs, biofuel, bioremediation, photobiology, and so on. The beamline is operational. It started in September 2022. In principle, it can reach, I think that the 900 hertz frame rates. So far, we have already validated 3 different methods for sample delivery: fixed target, extrusion, and tape drive. So it's performing well. It's one of the flagship beamlines based on a Jungfrau detector. So it's generating quite a lot of data. Then ID14, the nuclear resonance scattering beamline for geoscience, so high pressure science as well, superconductivity, magnetism at megabars. The beamline is on the construction. Here you have some pictures taken last month. You see that the control cabins that are finished. The beam is already in the optical hatch. This is the radiation test in April. And the custom monochromator, high load monochromators, is already on site, and the nanoscope is under commissioning ID18. So ID18 will be running until August 2023, and then it will be transferred to ID14, the new port. Then we have the X-ray microscopy beeline oriented to cultural heritage and sample environment. Environmental science. I will not talk about this because you have a talk by Iran. So I will just move on. So he will just present the current status. Then ID24, which actually hosts as well the high power laser facility. So this is a versatile beamline as well for in situ operando chemistry, laser shock science, environmental science, and so on. The high power laser facility is already running at 50 joule, has already got the first good result from 3 experiments. Apart from it, we have the double crystal monochromator station that hosts a micro X-ray absorption spectroscopy and diamond and base cells as well. So this is running quite well. This beamline got the second double crystal monochromator prototype fully made at the SRF. So we are happy because the results are quite promising. Let's put it in that way. And another beamline which should be upgraded, I mean, the DCM should be upgraded soon, is ID24 for X-ray emission spectroscopy for diluted samples. For the time being, it's running with the old monochromator and it's operational. So it's open with both tender and X-ray, hard X-ray setups, crystal analyzers. So this is the planning from, well, last year to 2025. So it's a very busy period for many beamlines. So everything should be finished by 2025. And I want to highlight today that we have the chance to split. It's just the BN18, which is the high throughput phase contrast tomography beamline, where there is quite a lot of results going on biomedical applications. Notably the one that was published in Nature Method not long ago on the application of phase contrast tomography to a LAM, COVID, let's say LAM. The result shows the shortcut of both vascular system, the ones that get the oxygen and the ones that remove it. So that's one of the reasons. There was a very impressive result. And the beamline so far is trying to go fully operational, not only with lungs, but brain, heart. So there has been a lot of the number of organs, human organs that have been scanned. So they are building what we call the Human Organ Atlas. So it's a kind of Google map for the body. So they can actually image the organs from the full scale down to the fine scale of the cellular level. So it's impressive what we can get on BN18. I want to also highlight a recent example of MX result applying BN20, small angle scattering, BN29 and cryo-EM. It was possible to get the structure of one of the let's say, particular mechanism that is behind the African sleeping sickness. So this is an important achievement to know how this virus, parasite, can escape the immune system. And another example has nothing to do with it, but I wanted also to highlight here was the application of, again, phase contrast tomography, but in this case on the nanometer scales to the degradation mechanism in lithium-ion batteries. So here you have how the heterogeneous nature of in this case, this is lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt cathode. How can I say, behave after some cycles, and also the heterogeneous deformation of the formation of active particles within the battery in 3D. So those examples show the application of such a single phase contrast tomography technique at different fields, research area. But at the same time, there are many things going on in quantum phenomena, beamlines like AD32, hot materials like Gaston will show you, high pressure science. We are still working a lot on catalysis, electrochemical cells on the operando conditions, getting results from nature, biomineralizations, volcanic eruptions, and so on, and some results that I'm sure Iran will present on cultural heritage. So the tendency is to go to operando thanks to the 4th generation synchrotrons. I mean, we go to 4D to study dynamics of buried interface in full devices. It covers from agriculture, security, environmental science at different length scales, also applied to material processing, as I already showed, and batteries and fundamental sciences. And finally, Earth and planetary science and geoscience. So, and with this, I want to just to share a small video. Just let me see if it works.
We cannot hear the video, we can only see it. So
Sorry.
Maybe
so
when you share, you have to choose share video somewhere, at least with Zoom.
Well, I think that then I just
I think that the best is that you describe the video and what is
well,
saying, and
it's
and
just,
that's
you know, it's difficult to describe the video on so look, it doesn't matter. It's just if you cannot hear the video, then it doesn't make too much sense. So I think that this is the last one, actually, the last slide. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gemma, for this very interesting talk. And now the room is open for questions. Remember that if you want to make some questions or some comments, you can use the hand icon that you have to participate, and then we can give you the word. If not, I have one question before you leave for the flight. I think you showed that with the new upgrade of the synchrotron, they are going to increase current and brilliance, no? And which is the future that you see of the synchrotrons? Is it to increase the coherence, decrease the brilliance, reduce the nano size of the focus? Which is what this would be the main direction that should upgrade the synchrotrons in the next years?
Well, the coming synchrotron upgrades, they will improve much better than the SRF, the coherence or the brilliance. For the time being, what we see is that we have to get used to the new source, because the beamlines are adapting to the new source. To be honest, we increased by far the photon flux. Our optics is getting used to it, and we are learning how to, because the detector cannot follow all the time the increase on the frame rate. I mean, the potential rate, let's say, of the measurements. I believe that the increase of the coherence and the reduction of the midband has opened a new field. I mean, in high pressure science, we see that right now they are getting a smaller beams and higher pressures. I mean, you will get the presentation from Gaston. In coherence, is the same. I mean, the improved coherence allows you to get, you know, before it was impossible to study proteins at very high flux, but now you can reduce the flux. I mean, because you bigger beam, let's say, with the higher coherence. So you can image samples that before was not possible simply because of the damage. So I honestly believe that we are starting to discover what we can do with the new source. We are far from, and as I say, we are going operando in situ for the time being, not in vivo, well, almost in vitro, let's say, but that is the future. What else? I think that we have to learn. You know, we are still discovering what there's a lot.
I made this question because yesterday I hear the Professor Sekasi, that is the leader project of the African Synchrotron, that was the African Synchrotron, and what I understood is that they proposed to, in our project, in the project that of LAMISTAD, of the Greater Caribbean project, to go towards the fourth generation synchrotron. That is the case of the EBS.
More emittance, yeah. And higher energy. I don't know if they go higher energy or for sure higher energy. You know, this is our, let's say, it's a we can go operando thanks to higher energies. So this is a niche, the gap that we should keep for the future. We should profit from it. There's been like ID15A that they are getting results at 500 keV that they are really impressive in battery on the high temperature batteries, because there's a lot of issues with battery at high temperatures. And so, and pinlines like, for additive manufacturing on site, I mean, operando. So there are many things that I believe that will come up, and just profiting from the low emittance and higher coherence at higher energies.
Okay, thank you very much. If there is no more questions, someone has any question, we have time. Carlos, you have some question or what?
Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gemma, for the very nice presentation on all the information you put in it. I would like to ask you about if you have in Grenoble some kind of funding for Latin American students in order to visit you and in order to make some experiment there.
This is a good question. So far, I must say that we have our member states and associate members, which they are the priority. However, we are working on different schemes with the European Commission, to host people from not only from Latin America, but from Africa, from Asia. So we are open to get people, I mean, trainees, or PhD students. We have a couple of calls. We are always open, even if officially we don't have a call oriented to Latin America. Yeah.
Okay, we have to work this.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Gemma.
Yeah. We should.
Nice to see you.
Okay, Gemma, thank you very much. I know that you are now leaving for taking a flight, so we don't disturb you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
You asked to Gaston and Iran and Samuel.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, if you have any other question. So see you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Now we are going to pass to Dr. Alabarce. Dr. Alabarce is the current beeline scientist of the Express beeline at the Elettra Synchrotron, Synchrotron radiation facility in Trieste, in Italy. Federico is an Italo-Brazilian researcher who is currently involved in Elettra's agreed programs towards the so-called Elettra 2.0, no? Is the real name of the project. Well, Federico.
Thanks, Juan. Can you see my presentation there?
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
Super good. Okay, so at this talk, we will answer the question which Carlos Odamasgui put to us: financial support for Latin American researchers. So, Elettra, well, when Juan proposed me this talk, it was interesting that he asked me in some way how to show how I arrived here at Elettra, coming from Brazil. But also I asked, okay, should I speak about our beeline? That no, please do something more abroad, but more speaking about electron in general, but on the other side, I see that there are so many extreme condition scientists in this room. So this talk is more turned for the Latin American researcher, but I will speak a little bit also for our beamline, just for attend all the community here which is online. So here it is this line from this talk. I will speak briefly about how I reach the electron synchrotron and working here on extreme conditions. Then I introduce the electron synchrotron facility and the Fermi-free electron laser light source. Then we will speak about the financial support for experiments at Electra, financial support for training for students, PhD student, postdoc, and also financial support for scientists, professor, not only for Europe, but for all part of the world. Okay, just briefly speaking about my background. I did my degree in physics at the University Federal do Rio Grande do Sul in Porto Alegre. My master in material science in the same university, in one laboratory, which so far as you know, is one of the first laboratory which was working in extreme conditions in the Latino and South America. Then, as a function of the works we're developing there, in my master, I was invited to go to the Goldschmidt conference. At the time it was in Switzerland. I received a fellow to present my work there. And during the conference, I got invitation to do my PhD in France. So I came to Montpellier, where I also continue working in the extreme condition field, now with high pressure, and then I start to enter in the large facilities such as Synchrotrons. After my PhD, I was invited to work in the Synchrotron Soleil, where I continue work in the extreme condition field. Now I started to do local contact at Synchrotron and also continue working with I started to work in the extreme condition development. I started also my own research project there. As a function of this work, then later I was invited to work at the University Pierre-Marie Curie in the IPMC group. Then from the infrared, I started to work on the neutron source. Again, continuing developing extreme condition instrumentation. Also give continuity to my research project. Then someone told me that at Electra, they were opening a new extreme condition beamline express. And there was people, they were searching people to develop the beamline, not only in terms of instrumentation, but also the research program. So this is a story about a beamline for a man for a beamline. This is when I joined the express beamline at Electra and started to work with extreme condition here at Electra. So this show, moreover, a pathway, for start to work in large facilities. First you start as a user, then you can do a postdoc in some beamline to get in touch with the instrumentation. Then you can also work side by side with your research engineers to the development of instrumentation for the Synchrotron. And later you can enter and work in a Synchrotron. Maybe this could be a suggestion path for future researchers which want to work and create a Synchrotron in Caribbean or wherever is proposed. So here we have an overview of several Synchrotrons in the world. Okay, now we're speaking about the African light source and Caribbean light source. Different from the North Hemisphere, there is very few Synchrotrons on the South Hemisphere. So I think it's very important that this kind of workshop is happening now to help to have some background for people constructing new Synchrotrons and more on the South Hemisphere. Here at Electra, we know that we have given some help to construct the CESAM and now the African light source, and we'll be very glad to contribute to construct and give some information for the Caribbean light source. Doing a specific zone in Europe, you see a high concentration of Synchrotrons around. And this, we know the result of this. Concentration, people together have collaboration, things happen, things move on. Here in Electra, we have a lot of collaboration came from other Synchrotrons to help us with some developments and vice versa. Okay, let's now speak about the Electra Synchrotron facility and the Fermi free electron laser light source. if you enter the website or see this talk later, there is some video, some animation, we can give some instruction about it. So first, Electra is a third-generation synchrotron radiation facility. And side by side at Electra, we have the Fermi, which is a 1.5 JeV speed free electron laser facility. Here you can see the site, and there on the background, the city of Trieste and the Adriatic Sea. More specifically about the Fermi light source, is free electron laser radiation for multidisciplinary investigation, and is one of the only few sources operating in the world in this range of energy, which go from the ultraviolet and soft X-ray range. So this is very interesting about the Fermi, this range of energy which it works. Now let's go speak a little bit more about the Electra. Here we have a picture which was later given by us from the Soviet Union. It's a picture taken by the satellite about the construction of Electra in the very beginning, in 1992. Electra, as you see, 1992 is very old. And the idea, the initial plan of Electra is to be a complementary synchrotron to the SRF, which was being constructed side by side. In the beginning, the guys even shared some engineers, some ideas. So Electra, how is operating today, is you can see that it works with operated two different energy, 2.0 and 2.4 JeV, and a different energy from the other synchrotron was building at the same time at SRF. And this is something which is very, can catch, remember about Electra, complementarity, you know? We complement other sources in Europe and in the world. Here, just briefly, what is the status of Electra, where came our foundings. The association established in 1987 to construct and manage synchrotron source. And in between the several objectives, there is the skill development and transfer from this skill development to other communities. Electra today works with 28 beamlines in operation, with recent upgrades. As I showed before, as I commented before, in 2016, they inaugurate Express, the extreme condition beamline. That is when I joined them to continue to this product. And as other synchrotron facilities, Electra is also going to the Electra 2.0 project. We did some consultation to the users community, and there was a consensus that they're looking for a higher brilliance, high level of coherence in both planes, smaller pot size and divergence, higher flux and the variety of insertion device, and the update of several beamlines, which has already started. Electra 2.0 is already a reality. It has started. We have some beamlines which are already receiving some upgrades. And from the calendar, if I don't make a mistake, we are predicting to close now in 2025 for the upgrade of the machine. Okay, what about experiments at Electra? Now, if you're looking for experiment Electra, if you don't know which beamline, I recommend to go to the website, and then you can even choose the beamline to do an experiment by the technique. As you can see there on the bottom of the slide, we have several techniques which are requiring more low energy. And for example, if you choose diffraction, it will open a new tab showing the possibilities of diffraction, powder, biocrystallography, and there you have the high pressure studies, the Express beamline. If you press Express, then you can find us. Now speaking more focus on our beamline is an Italo-Indian beamline, which is operating since 2016. This is a very recent beamline. And basically, we studied the material, we studied the structure of the matter under the extreme condition of pressure. More specifically, since you have so many extreme condition people on this section, here is an overview about what we're doing today. the beamline is also complementary, is a complementary instrument in Europe. So we are working today with X-ray source of superconductor Wigler, which give us a fixed energy of 20 keV. The beam spot is varying from 50 to 80 microns. With this beam spot, can perform experiments up to 100 GPa. We work with both pound or single crystal that are collected with using a Pilatus detector, which is one upgrade from the beamline. We already received this upgrade of the beamline. This is already Electra 2.0 arrived on the beamline stations. It's a very good detector. As a pressure transmitting medium, some users work can load the sample of helium by gas loading or some other fluids by cryogenic. We can go down to 10 Kelvin using cryostat. This means high pressure together with a cryostat, low temperature, and or high pressure together with a high temperature by resistive heating. If you want to go below this pressure range or temperature range, you can go to other instruments out in the world and in Europe, or the Synchrotrons. Okay, what about our users? Just speaking about express beamline, here is we can see the distribution of the PI, the principal investigator nationality of our users. And of course, since the Italo-Indian beamline, we expect that there are several Indians coming here because they have some conventions, some founding, we have Italian. But of course, because I am Brazilian, I'm doing publicity of the beamline and Electra to the South America, to Brazil, which will have an increasing community of extreme condition users there. And here you can see also users can submitting proposals to us for all parts of the world, United States, Switzerland, Germany, China, Russia. Then if someone speaks, okay, Brazilian users are applying for proposal there, how they are arriving at Electra? So this was my idea about this talk, is focus on now on the Latin American researchers, how to perform, how to obtain support for experiment at Electra, how have your proposals, your experience, with come to here to Electra to express or any instrument with your financial support. Actually, we have 3 different sources of financial support. And this idea for the financial support, this is another, how can I say, flag, which Electra decides to promote, not only complementary in terms of energy, but also inclusion. We are open to include the researcher for other of the world to come here to do experiments with us. So one of the source financial supports which you have is called International User Support. This is managed by Electra. It's similar to the Calypso Plus, which you have before. It gives support for proposal up to 2 researchers. 12, basically, they are reimbursing, giving support for transport and accommodation, up to 800 euros per person. Of course, if you are very far in the world, this will be just a contribution for your mission. In order to be assured to obtain this financial support, the users during the proposal application should mark, the case of this financial support is crucial for my participation. You can imagine that there are some users which came from maybe some countries in development which don't have financial support for the government to come to Electra. So this contribution is crucial for them to perform the experiments here. This is very important to say that for our financial support, in order to obtain the financial support, the proposal should, of course, obtain a good rank, a good score, to be competitive, and be, how can I say, receive this prize, to come here to the experiment. So this is the first possibility of financial support. Second possibility of financial support for the experiment here, you have the CHERIC platform, Central European Research Infrastructure Consortium, which again is for European and world researchers. Everybody in the world can apply for this financial grant. How does it work? First, different from the previous grant, it removes full transport accommodation up to researchers. Okay. One of the conditions is that on the proposal, you should require multi-technical experiments. So this means you should require 2 instruments in your proposal. The research should be multi-technical. Okay. And also, you should require, of course, if you're speaking about 2 instruments, 2 facilities which are in collaboration, which are associated to sharing. So, for example, if some users want to do a combined structural and vibrational experiment at Elettra, he can submit a proposal involving these 2 techniques, ask for the shared financial support, and eventually, if he receives a good score, he can receive financial support for 2 experiments for do a combined technique. Okay, so this is the second possibility of financial support. Third one is managed by the ISTP. Is a financial support dedicated for in development countries. And for example, is from here where my collaborators from Brazil, they are able to get financial support to come to Elettra to perform the experiments. The ISTP has an associated together with the Elettra user program. They have this program which can give financial support up to 3 researchers come from the in development countries, such as from Africa, South Latin America. In general, I think there is a list where which are the countries which will receive this grant. Very interesting. They have 100% of the mission which receive financial support, transport, accommodation, and meals. Independent of the quantity of the shift, which the proposal requests to have 2 or 3 scientists which receive such a financial support. I'm passing all this information, but I hope that the public concerned are taking notes about where to later find for this information on the website. I think everything you can find in the Elettra webpage, okay? Later, if someone wants some more specific information, can send an email to me and I can forward it to the Elettra user's office. Okay, I got interested to come to Elettra to make an experiment with financial support. How should I do? Please first find a beamline which have the technique which you help to solve your scientific question. Contact the beamline team to discuss your experiment. Open account on the VUO Virtual Unified Office, and there you can find a way to submit your proposal. One suggestion is that if you really need the financial support, if it's crucial to come to you to have a financial support to perform an experiment, check the box off that is crucial. Otherwise, it's not assured. The financial support is not assured. Okay. Very interesting. But what about PhD and postdoc opportunities at Italian laboratories and Elettra? It's very interesting that later we have a talk here from Diana Bedola, which had exactly this experience. She had the opportunity to come to Trieste with a trio fellow. So if you have more specific questions about, maybe she can share her experience. What I obtained from the web page and what we have from here is that the 2 programs are offered for scientists which are coming from developing countries. Okay, this opportunity which are given for people which came from Africa, Latin America, South America, and basically how does it work is. Well, from web page is marked that is for up to 24 months. You can apply for 6 months, 12 months, 1.5 years. Here we have the price of the fellow by month, which the students will receive. For Trieste, this is very good because Trieste is a very low-cost city. There is this condition, the criteria for receiving the fellow. Okay, the guy should be from the nationality and be working be associated to a university in developing country, possess a master degree, so he or her can compete for a PhD or a postdoc, should speak and read and write English. What else? Some priority attention is given to female candidates, but the application is also open for senior scientists. So maybe some people which are senior scientists which apply for this program, it's possible. We here at Beamline, we often have application from some students from India, but also from Brazil, which should be soon come to us. Okay, but maybe I hope that Diana will speak more about that. Then we have also the ISTP Research Associate Fellow for scientists and professors. So if you want to come again to here, to Elettra, or to Trieste, to pass a visit as a professor, and if you are from working in a development country, there is a possibility to apply for such a fellow as well. It's not only for students. The financial support go for visits stays which go from in between 30 and 60 days. Depending on your age or experience, now you can receive 3 visits. Senior scientists can receive an unlimited number of visits by the STP. In practice, the person, the candidate will have an office on ISTP, but if they have collaborators here at Elettra, for example, he can come here to every day during his stay to perform its visit. So from what I showed here, I showed several ways for researchers which are coming from Latin America come to Elettra to have some experience in some European synchrotron, and a synchrotron which is open for inclusion for the scientists. And this is very good in the way that if you open a synchrotron in Latin America, to give information for these professionals. So there are several possibilities to come to join us to pass for such a formation before go back home and apply this knowledge, this technique to the persons obtained here. Okay, if science is not enough motivation to come to Trieste, you have another ones in the slides. Trieste is a very pleasant city to live. It's on the seaside. Have several events around the year. If you are interested to submit a proposal more specific to our Beamline, the extreme condition Beamline from the letter, you can contact the team. Usually proposals deadline call is around 15 or March or 15 September. Please consult us before submitting the proposal. I'd like to thank you all for your attention. And if you have some questions, maybe now is the moment.
Thank you very much, Federico, for this very interesting talk and this very motivating talk to go to a synchrotron from anywhere in the world. Now the room is open for questions. Please remember, if you have any questions, raise the hand or use the hand icon. Okay, Marvedin, I can enable your camera in case that you want to share the video as well.
I don't know why. I would love to open my camera. Federico, thank you so much for a very useful presentation for those of us who are in developing countries. I'm from Jamaica. I am in the Caribbean islands. So we are normally grouped with Latin America. So it's Latin America and the Caribbean. And I find this very useful. I have just one question about the scientific cooperation agreement. Want to know if that is for funding opportunity 1, the international user support. Is that scientific cooperation agreement between the governments and Electra, or is it between institutions and Electra? And yeah, that's it.
So I just go back fast maybe to those talks. What I spoke there are some financial support which is directly managed by Electra, and some of them, for example, this international user support. These are for users, someone which apply a proposal for Electra, which would like to come to perform an experiment with to solve a scientific case here inside at Electra. Okay, so this financial support is the destination for the experiment. For some researcher, professor, a group of PhD student, which is in any university in the world, which have a scientific case for his thesis, would like to perform an experiment, this financial support is for perform the experiment. In the same line, the CHERIC is also the same frame, is a financial support for perform the experiment, for bringing the user, which wherever country he is, to Electra, or for all these other instruments to perform the experiment. ICTP users program here in this frame is again the same frame, is for perform experiments at Electra. Then you have the field fellow, which is linked to the ICTP, which is here based in Trieste, which opens not only for Electra, okay. ICTP, if I'm not mistaken, is an institution which is connected to UNESCO, okay, and they have a special program not only for students or scientists which would like to work at Electra, but also in theoretical physics, such as the ICTP institution or CIS institution. Maybe later, wait that Diana can give more information about it, okay? But this, all of this is more here for our region, our field. But if you enter there on the trio in the ICTP webpage, here you have the link, you can read there, training and research in Italian laboratories. It's not only for Trieste. There you can see the search, you can see the list of laboratories in Italy, which you can have received financial support for it. So it's not necessarily linked to the Italian government now and Electra. Is an agreement between several institutions, Electra, Italian government, UNESCO, okay, to help the researchers in developing countries to come to Italy to perform the research. And in the same line, the ICTP Associate Fellow is more specific to the ICTP. I believe is more here in the region, or more from Trieste, but the ICTP Fellow also can be useful for not only experimentalists, but theoretical physics and all the research programs which are linked to CISA. CISA is another international school which here is based here in Trieste, and if you are interested, I invite you to enter the webpage of CISA, ICTP, and Electra, and there you can see all the field research domains which you have there, which can be interested for your or someone else domain. Maybe Diana can give a contribution to us.
Yeah, Diana, please.
Hi. So yes, I will talk later also on all the on other opportunities that you have for coming here. But I think that the question was referred on who pays, and actually part of it mostly is ICTP, but they already have arrangements with Electra. So already with some applications, if it's from a developing country, already they talk with ICTP how many they can fund and if they can fund this and that. So you apply for the beam time, you apply for support, and then ICTP intervenes, even when applying for beam time. That's not the same case with CERIC, but they also have their agreements. But basically, behind all, it's ICTP is around supporting science. So, if that was the question on who pays.
To be complementary, sorry to interrupt, is very important. The candidate should have a scientific project. We're speaking about financial support to a scientific project. If it is at visit of a professor, or is a true fellow, a PhD student, who want to pass a month here for experiment. We're speaking about financial support for a scientific project.
Okay, thanks, Federico. Thanks, Diana. I just let me add that there are some of the programs I've looked on at ICTP because of the connection with UNESCO and TWAS. They define within developing countries. They also define least developed countries, and so people need to be aware that some of the calls are for that subset of developing countries, which is called least developed countries, and we need to look on the list. But thank you so much for this very useful.
Also there is for instance, the SETIC program that Federico was describing. In that one, it doesn't matter from which country you come. So it's all good, based on how good you wrote your project and how important is the research you're doing. So it's based only on merit. So if you get the funding, you get the funding.
Just an example, at this semester, we have 4 proposals, 2 coming from India and 2 from Brazil, which receive financial support through ICTP. This means 3 researchers each proposal, which ICTP funded to come to our beamline. And all of them, because they received a high score. The projects were very good. They wrote very well. It was very organized. And by merit, they received the financial support to come here to work with us. For us, this is very important, it's very good, because then they go back to their country, to this institution with the experience which they obtain here for us. Particularly, in my case, I'm very glad to be helping the future users of the Sirius Synchrotron in Brazil for get the maximum benefit of a synchrotron there. So they get some learning, some know-how, and then they can go back to give continuation more locally. Super, thank you so much for you all for the interest. If you have more interest, maybe you can contact us. You can find our address, email somewhere.
And also, I think in part of what you were saying that it's important for the Sirius now. But if we are lucky and we get the Large Caribbean Synchrotron built, it will be a necessary tool to training the researchers there in that part in these countries. And I have 2 questions, if I'm allowed. I think that we are on a schedule. Of course, apart from this, you are open to receive research PhD or postdoctoral fellows that they want to carry out a research stay of a couple of months or something like that, no? Isn't it? Because without the financial part, maybe there are programs in some countries that they are funding the research stays abroad. Then I think it's important to highlight that you are open to receive these researchers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
LATRA have this concept of inclusion, no? So there is no frontiers, no barriers. Receive everyone which came for project. Receive several students here, postdoc or researchers which obtain ERC grants, Marie Curie grants. They come here to Trieste, to LATRA to work with us. This is we're open to receive.
And now I have sorry. Yeah. I have a more technical question, because I saw in your, maybe I missed something, but I think that I understood that the LATRA 2.0 is going towards a more developed 3rd generation synchrotron, but you are not going toward the 4th generation synchrotron.
No, but this is more a technical question. No, I think I'm not the specialist on the term, but from what I understood, the 4th generation synchrotron would imply, have not very, very spotty beam. And for us, for the low energy, this kills several beam lines which work with low energy, such as infrared.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if you understood, there is an upgrade of the machine.
Yeah.
But from what I understood, no one speaking about 4th generation synchrotron. It's just an upgrade from our 3rd one. We still will be working as the same technique as before. Yeah, for example, nowadays, I know that several synchrotrons, which are 3rd generation, there is a movement from some beamlines and users, which they are asking to not go to the 4th generation because this would kill infrared beamlines, for example. The infrared will not be possible anymore. So this is what I got. Maybe someone more in the domain can speak better about this, no, but this for what I understood.
Yeah, I think it's linked with the previous talk with the GEMA's talk that they was speaking that they were still adapting to the coherence and the brilliance that they can reach with this 4th generation machine, because it's really a change of the ring of the accelerator part.
Yeah. And as I said before, Electra is a complementary synchrotron. Now, if you want a 4th generation, you go to a 4th generation. If you want a 3rd generation plus, you come to Electra, for low energy. The idea is not to competitive, is complementary, to.
Thank you very much, Federico, for this
Thank
very
you
nice
very
talk.
much. You. Let me stop my sharing.
Irán Castillo. Dr. Castillo is the current permanent scientist at the ID21 beamline at the ESRF. His work is focusing on low energy X-ray microscopy techniques. Dr. Castillo is a Mexican researcher who has become a renowned specialist in the study of the distribution and biochemical modification of trace elements and nanomaterials in biological samples. And it's a pleasure to have Dr. Castillo here. Please, Hiram, you have the floor. We cannot hear you. You are mute.
Now it works. Okay.
Now.
And then I sharing the screen.
Exactly.
I don't find the tool.
There is an arrow. It's like
share
a
tray. Ah, yes. Okay, I see. Window. Share this window here. Do you see now my screen?
Yeah, but we don't see the in presentation mode. We can see only the slides.
I will. Now it's okay.
No, we are still watching the slides.
The other one.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Always this is it. 5%. Can I do? Yeah. Now?
No.
Oh,
there is I think the best is that you start the presentation mode, come back to the Teams and
then share
find where the
screen,
because you can share the screen or you can share a window if you have the option to
exactly.
share the window.
Yeah, I see. Stop. Window here. Share. Now should work.
Now perfect. Now
okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Hiram.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will talk about ID21, the X-ray microscopy beamline at the ESRF, and I will present some applications in environment, which is really my topic of research. And Marine Cott, who is the beamline responsible of the beamline, she is a specialist in cultural heritage research. So I will take some of her slides and try to explain to you, and not with the same level of detail, but I'll do my effort. So first I want to present the team, and the reason why I do that is to acknowledge the people that works on the beamline, but also to highlight our two last postdocs. Eduardo Villalobos is a Mexican scientist, and he is now a beamline scientist in Notos in Alba. So another scientist who is in a European synchrotron doing a successful career. And Luis is from Brazilian Guatemalan. And he is now, well, soon in a few weeks, will move to Diamond as a scientist in IO8, a microscopy, soft X-ray microscopy beamline. The rest of the team, we have mainly people working in cultural heritage, Clement and Ida doing a PhD thesis, and Marin is, and me and former postdoc Anna, etc. We work mainly on environmental topics, as well as Mohammad, who will be working in nanoplastic, joining a group soon. So a beamline, as of now, it's operating one microscope, one scanning X-ray microscope operating in vacuum with a resolution down to around 300 nanometers. We have single element X-ray fluorescence detectors, and one particularity is that we offer a cryogenic sample environment, which is compatible with biological applications. So we have a way to transfer the sample on frozen into the vacuum chamber. And we are just now installing a new microscope, to be able to fully exploit the EBS capabilities, the high flux and the coherence, so that we get a smaller beam spot. So we have with this one, we are expecting to get 100 by 100 nanometer beam size, and we have invested in more stable mechanics, but also in larger detectors, so that we have a better sensitivity. And we have invested also in an easier way to switch from room temperature environments to cryo environments, because the cryogenic sample environment is really one of our particularities of the beamline. And I will explain more in details why. So a beamline covers an energy range that goes from 2 to almost 11 kilo electron volts, which means that you can perform not only the mapping on X-ray fluorescence detection mode of elements, simultaneous detection, but also scans across the binding energies of the elements from phosphorus all the way to zinc now on these K edges, but also many of the L and even M edges, but obviously with less sensitivity. So we can analyze either through mapping or combination of mapping and X-ray absorption spectroscopy, many of the elements on the periodic table. So just to summarize our technique, well, we have a monochromator to select energy. We can scan it. We have KV focusing optics to get a small spot. We send the X-rays into the sample, and we collect an X-ray fluorescence microscope in each one of the pixels of our scan sample. Then after, we can display them through the creation of regions of interest in the detector and overlay them, in this case titanium, calcium, potassium, or we can do a fitting and separate them. And then after, we can select, we normally select one element as a target for performing a spectroscopy, X-ray absorption spectroscopy, and then we can position the beam in the small spots and collect an X-ray absorption spectroscopy, an X-ray absorption spectrum. And by looking at the features of the spectra, we can determine the coordination environment, mainly oxidation state and the kind of neighbors of the atom, which is doing the main absorption. So ID21 has users that come from many different fields. So, but as I said, the two main ones are cultural heritage and environmental science, but also we have a lot of users from health and medicine, and also from earth sciences. and manufacture materials. The kind of sample environment we provide, it does not, let's say, satisfy many of the criteria on research like batteries, etc. But we still have users from this community, so it's a very diverse. But we are pretty very happy and very proud to be main hosts of these communities, environmental science and cultural heritage, and also medicine, which have to some extent be the minority in ESRF. So I will do some present some examples. So one of the main topics of in environmental science is tracking elements in the environment, and we want to have a look at these elements, whether they are essential for life or for human, or non-essential, so they pose a potential threat to the environment, and we want to understand them from their nanoscale interactions to the interactions that they develop at the level of tissue, cells, bacteria, plants, etc., and all the way to understanding the global scale cycling. So, for example, you can, at the level of a continent, you can map the concentration of given elements, and then once you identify regions in which it's critical or of interest, then you can perform mining or remediation or etc. Whatever it's the aim. But if you want to go more towards what you can do at ID21 is to be able to map these elements, but at the level of a plant root, for example. And so element is moving through the cells, inside the cells, and where it's located, or at the level of a hair in the leaf, etc. But in all cases, the questions are the same. First, you want to know where is it located, whether it is at the micro nano scale or at the continental level or global scale, and you want to understand its chemistry. So X-ray fluorescence and X-ray absorption spectroscopy are two techniques that can evidently provide a lot of details in this to answer these questions. So one example I'm going to do evidently from environment is about what we can call sustainable agriculture. One very important process is symbiotic nitrogen fixation. Why? Because we use nitrogen fertilizers that we produce through a chemical reaction, an industrial process, which is consuming a lot of energy. It's not very environmentally friendly. And in reality, nature, it's able to perform this same process of fixing nitrogen into the soil in order so the plants can use it. And this is done through an association between rhizobia bacteria and the plant roots of leguminous plants. So this is a very interesting object, the nodule, because it has a very particular anatomy, and because inside of the cells you can find many bacteria interacting together and benefiting from the nutrients that the plant is providing in order to do the fixation of nitrogen, which in turn the plant will use. So if you understand well how this process works, you can maybe promote this in other plants, or you can more cleverly use alternating leguminous plants and other plants in order to minimize the consumption of nitrogen fertilizers. And this is a collaboration with the Spanish group, Manuel Gonzalez, and he has some funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So as you can see, it's got scales from the millimetric all the way to the submicron. So a submicron probe or a nanometric probe can give you a lot of interesting information. And on top of that, well, the fixation of the nitrogen for this iron is one of the main elements, which is the cofactor of the nitrogenase enzyme. Produces these iron sulfide clusters that contain also molybdenum. So we began a project to map, and here you can see this is the sketch of how the different zones in zone 3 is where you have active fixation, where the bacteria has established itself in the cell of the plant and is successfully producing nitrogen. You can see from these staining the anatomy of the different cells, and you can very well see where the bacteria has infected the cells. And if you perform X-ray fluorescence imaging, and then you get the superposition of iron, potassium, and calcium, then you observe also due to this like pinkish coloration, the location where you have successfully the bacteria has successfully infected the cells and is obtaining is very enriched in iron, and it's fixing the nitrogen. If you perform X-ray absorption spectroscopy, you will be able to understand for example, the ratios between iron 2 and iron 3 and understand more about this chemistry. Now, technically speaking, so we sample the nodules and then we produce cryosections. This is the way we do the experiment. So once we get a cryosection, this cryosection is transferred into the microscope and analyzed under cryogenic conditions, and then we produce the map. And from this global map, we can do zoom into the cells and get more details all the way to the level of the maximum resolution of the beamline. Now, because ABS is giving us a lot of flux, but we're also investing in new detectors, before, or let's say at the time being, we are producing this image in about 3 hours. But in fact, with the new generation of detectors that we will install in the new microscope, our aim is to decrease the dwell time to 10 milliseconds only, which will give you either the same image with a resolution of 1 micron or something larger with the same resolution of 3 micron, but in significantly less. So you will get like a megapixel image in only 2.7 hours, and everything we're doing is working on optimizing the speed of the scanning and implementing these new detectors. We will have two 5-element detector, which will be of benefit for our user community, which they always want to have a look at the full thing and then zoom in. So this is very important. Now another topic is the topic of the transfer of cadmium in cacao. This is actually of quite relevance for Latin American community, because as you can see, there is a new regulation in the European Union of 0.6 milligram per kilogram in cacao bean, in cocoa, that you should not exceed if you want to be able to import this into the European Union. And in average, the Latin American cacao contains higher concentrations. So of course, knowing this is good, but you don't want to block like the importations or the exportations from these countries. So what you would like to see is how can you solve this? You want to maintain the consumption of this cacao, which is of good quality, but you want to decrease the amount of cadmium. So a project was established in collaboration with Geraldine Sarre, is a PhD student, Esther Blomaer from Belgium. And they went into in Trinidad and Tobago in one of the fields where they are growing many varieties of cacao, and identify one which is able to accumulate high concentrations of cadmium, and identify some of them which are have low concentrations of cadmium. So in here I present an image of a branch. If we analyze this branch with laser ablation ACPMS, you get a map of half of this branch, but the resolution is 30 micron. If you come to our beamline, okay, for the time being, you can do a smaller map, but the resolution is much better. And in that way, you can also detect low energy elements like strontium, which is colocalized with calcium. And you can see the shape of these crystals. These crystals are oxalate crystals that contain significant amount of cadmium. There is a lot of these crystals in the branches, which are actually the main location of cadmium, which is a happy result, which means that we could get even more cadmium in the beans if these crystals and the branch was not capable of actually retaining most of the cadmium which is being absorbed. So cadmium is in the calcium oxide crystals. And also, just to give a context again, we are trying to push this acquisition. So for the time being, we are at about 6 hours in order to give you a map like this. But with the new detectors and with the decrease of a factor of 20, and you will get this image in 20 minutes, or we can approximate our area of analysis to what we can do in laser ablation, ICP-MS, but with much better resolution. And also we can perform this under cryogenic conditions, which is not the case for laser ablation. So in here, I present you a cryofix brand tissue. Again, this is the section we prepare at the beamline, and you see the different maps. And what the results is that the branches, they are main hub for cadmium. They retain a lot of cadmium. There is transfer from via xylem and phloem from images that we perform in other tissues, and also other data that comes from other techniques. But one of the main results is that the cadmium is really fairly well colocalized with these calcium oxalate crystals, and we are trying to understand more or less why these crystals are produced and what is their main role. But for the time being, we believe this is actually quite a good thing, and yeah, more studies are ongoing. So staying with this topic of micronutrient deficiency or imbalance, or some elements like iron, they are very important for the plants. Other elements like cadmium, they produce toxicity and are bad for plants or in agriculture. So there is an ERC project from a colleague, Astrid Aveland, in the Goethe Institute in Toulouse, who is investigating the potential use of nanoformulations in agriculture. Here you can see the comparison between the copper sulfate salt, which you apply foliarly to the grapevines, as opposed to nano copper oxide. And you can see that in here you have much more of the chemical that you need to use, but it's also much more washed off from the leaf, and this causes an increase in the concentration in the soil. So the nano formulation is quite an interesting option, but we have to investigate exactly if the benefits are, if there are no risks that we are not observing. So we want to know, once we deposit the particles in the top of the leaf, how they travel across the different tissues, and for that XRF and X-ray absorption spectroscopy can give you a lot about their localization and the transformations, the chemical transformations. So I will show you a bit the results with zinc oxide, which is a nutrient. So, and just to quickly summarize what we do for preparation. So portions of the leaf are introduced into this OCT, and they are cryofixed at the beamline. And then later they are sectioned with a microtome, and we catch the section fresh from the microtome, place it into the sample holder, and transfer into the microscope. All this work we do at the beamline for all the experiments that we can do. Sometimes users are coming from too far, and it's difficult to bring the living plants. So in here, what you see is a map of zinc, calcium, and potassium. You can see zinc was deposited in the upper surface, but it has made it across all the layers of cells in the leaf. This is pepper leaf. And then, so evidently we are looking at nanoparticles. So in some of them, we can see very small hotspots with our resolution right now. This pixel is 200 nanometer. And Hema mentioned the new generation of double crystal monochromatosis ESRF. We are lucky we got the first one, the prototype. So we came with some difficulties, but we are now using it, and we can perform nanospectroscopy. We can really do the SANES on the hotspots where there's still signal of the zinc oxide nanoparticles. But more importantly, because we go so fast, we can scan in many points all around the tissue, and then we can classify them and compare them to references. So for example, this is the initial condition, like the zinc oxide nanoparticle. When you are in the upper epidermis, so in the top part, you have much more of it, which is still zinc oxide. And as you move through the layers, first you go to a speciation which resembles the cysteine. So SH group sulfur is playing a role in the palisade zone. But as you go to the lower layers, then you have mainly carboxylates like phytate and citrate. And being able to do this identification of the chemical transformation across the different tissues allows us to see, first of all, well, we see that the zinc is released from the particles, and it's actually a source of zinc for the plants. So it has potential applications as nanofertilizer. So, well, it's now I'm going to switch to the cultural heritage. So why do you want to investigate cultural heritage? Well, you want to understand their past, so how they were produced, but you also want to preserve their degradation. So for that, you want to understand the reactions, what's the synthesis, and what are the products that are being produced over the time. So you have several approaches as in environmental science. First, you can map an entire painting, but this you don't do in a synchrotron, or not to my knowledge. But generally, what they do is they work in small fragments from the painting. So small fragments come to the beamline, and these small fragments then you can investigate. And in here you can see a list of many important objects, so we can identify, for example, the Van Gogh sunflowers, in which chromium was being reduced from chromate to chromium 3, and this is the reason why the yellow was being lost. But there are other objects like Rodin's modeling clay, Mino's paintings, and from like very old, like this Egyptian papyrus, to more modern paintings. And in all these objects that have been studied at the beamline, then always the combination of X-ray fluorescence and X-ray absorption spectroscopy has provided important information to understand how they were done and where are they going and why they are degrading. So in here, I have just like using the periodic table in much more examples. For example, cadmium yellow degradation in the screen painting. So typically what you have is you have a pigment which is embedded in some kind of binder, and you have exposure to different factors, environmental factors, and this leads to degradation of the products. So as I mentioned, the chrome yellow degradation in Van Gogh, but also the cadmium yellow degradation in the screen, and other kind of paintings. So we explore as much as possible the different regions where ID21 can provide information. For example, in Metacinnabar, you have the sulfur. We can do sulfur spectroscopy, and this is in Leonardo's codex, and etc. Copper speciation in the papyrus from Egyptian object. So an example more in detail is, again, this cadmium yellow. So it's a cadmium sulfide pigment. And with time, it loses its color, and they wanted to understand why it's losing its yellow color. And so first, with the portable equipment, you can see distribution of the cadmium and the chlorine. So it seems like chlorine has something to do with this modification. Then again, you take a small fragment. This small fragment was analyzed at ID21, and you can see the distribution of sulfur and cadmium. But the more important thing is, like, you can see by looking at the Saints curves that in some of the points you have the production of sulfates, and this sulfate is in fact changing its color. It's no longer white, and this oxidation process of sulfur is what is causing the degradation of the painting. By understanding this, I'm not so sure what they can do, but I guess this is what they want to know in order to prevent that this very famous painting, important cultural heritage object, becomes fully degraded. And so just to give you context also in terms of the EVS, as I did in some of the examples in environment, in 2016, before the EVS, this is the experiment that they were doing. So you had maps, and you had some points where you can do scenes, or you can do maps at different energies and do like oxidation state mapping, where you do 2 or 3 energies, and then you can do ratios of these maps, in particular for sulfur, because there is a very big differences in the absorbance spectrum, the absorption spectrum. But now with EVS and the investments, and we think in the future when we finalize our project on the nano SXM, but this is already an example. You see, we have a smaller beam, and now more the strategy is, instead of doing 2 or 3 maps, you actually do the same image, you repeat it all across the edge, and you align the stack, and then you get what we call what is a 2D map, but with saints. So in each one of the pixels, you have a saints. So a bit like the STXM, but in scanning mode. So all the game is to speed up the fluorescence acquisition so that we can continue to do this. And so what the future of ID21 is that we are putting our most effort into completing the installation of the scanning X-ray nanoscope that will be much better for detection limits, for scanning speed, and for high spatial resolution. But we are also convinced that we need to continue to support our unique using community, which is mainly based on cultural heritage and environment. So we maintain in both microscopes a complementarity and a compatibility, and we are open to all research domains, but we want to maintain this kind of specificity. And with that, thank you for your attention. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Iran, because for this very, very interesting talk. And I think this is we were discussing in the previous symposium that the importance of the agriculture and cultural heritage studies in the development of the countries, of the Latin American countries, the Greater Caribbean countries. And now the room is open for questions. Amaury, you have questions? Sarira, you can speak now.
Hello.
Hi.
It is a nice talk. I'm from Mexico City calling. My question is related to what the chairman told about the agriculture. You see, you were telling about the coffee beans, and I mean, what you are showing is the concentration of chromium and strontium. Now, my question is, do you work in coordination with the farmers that they have this type of problems, and how to get rid of these metal excess?
Yeah, well, just precisely the context of this project is it's a project which is a collaboration with the European lab and the people from this site in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think there is also researchers from Peru. In which they have developed or breed that they have produced different genotypes of cacao with the aim of finding a genotype which has less capability to obtain cadmium. One thing which is important is to understand that it's not that Latin America is contaminated with cadmium. These plants are capable of obtaining cadmium from background levels. So the concentrations are fairly low. It's not a contaminated site. They come from normal background levels in soil. Cadmium is everywhere, but the plants are capable of still transporting significant amounts to the bin. So it's indeed a collaboration with people who are plant specialists, who are in close contact with people from field, and the idea is to develop a technology based on several strategies. You can do something in the soil, you can do something about the genotype, and you can do something about the product, right? Once you begin to mill the cacao bean, etc., you can. So there's several groups investigating at all the different stages what you can do to minimize the content of cadmium. In our case, we are looking really in the plant, how cadmium moves in the plant. In this case, we have done mainly studies in the high cadmium accumulator. But once you understand some of the concepts, then you can look more in detail. For example, what happens if you have a plant that does not produce any calcium oxalate crystals? Is something related to calcium homeostasis in the plant, and perhaps you get even more cadmium in the bean. So this kind of things is exactly what we are looking. But the project is in principle in touch with people from the agricultural fields, right? So it's a very realistic. These plants are really in the field. It's not something we do in a laboratory with a few plants. It's like really grown up trees which are producing cacao beans, etc. And we have cacao bean samples, but we have not analyzed.
I have a second question. Regarding the one which you were talking about, this nitrogen fixation, when you study these things, well, because these are very new to me, and so that is why my questions are. So this nitrogen fixation, can you suggest that what is the way to improve this nitrogen fixation in leguminous families? Or do you have any, I mean, suggest to the farming class, because that is what is important. You may study, you tell, but if it's a field, then there is no point.
Yes, that is a very good question. Do you see my other slide, or I'm only sharing?
No.
You don't. Okay.
No, you have to share again the presentation.
Let me see if I can copy it. You see it now. You see a new slide.
No.
No, because I'm not sharing anything there.
No, you're not sharing anything.
Okay.
You stopped sharing the presentation.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that on purpose. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, we're back. I'm sharing something now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I am not the super expert in the topic, but just quickly to address your question, the reason why we're studying iron is because it's very important for two main enzymes, nitrogenase and legemoglobin. And the project right now is, you can study other elements which are important as well, but the project right now is looking at how iron is being transported from the flow and silent system of the plant into the nodule, delivering it, and then you have ferroreductases, transporters through the different cell walls, nicotinamine chaperones, etc. So what you do is you can turn off a potential gene, a gene that you believe it's very important in the trafficking and the transporting of iron into the symbiosome, into the infected cell, and then you see the result. So you compare a non-mutant plant and the distribution of iron, and you get that. And if you block a given transporter, then you will see a different distribution of iron. And it's a way to confirm. And the full idea is exactly what you're asking, is how the plant manages to deliver iron into the symbiosome, and when it is lacking, what happens, and how you can make this procedure more efficient. And not only that, once you have understand what are the kind of genes that you need in a plant in order for it to develop a symbiosome or a nodule, then you can potentially transfer it into another plant species that normally wouldn't do this. Then you enter into GMO territory, and you may be against or in favor, but the idea of the project is exactly to understand what are the roles of the different genes and how this affects the distribution and the speciation of iron, in order to understand how this process can be more effective, or when it can be failing. Right? It's what we are trying to do.
Thank you.
We have another question from the chat that was made by Amaury Perez Martinez. Could Ecuador be included in the investigation of the content of cadmium in cocoa?
If I'm not mistaken, I think there are colleagues from Ecuador. Now, of course, at the level of a country, I don't know. I think it's a network. I don't know exactly all the participants, to be honest. I'm a collaborator and assisting in the analysis at the beamline, right? But I think that I could provide contact to my colleague who is actively participating in this project. Or another option is if someone is interested in performing similar kind of experiments, then we are always welcoming users from any country, right? There is no restriction. So if anyone from Ecuador wants to do a study, we can help them in explaining how the process of applying for time, etc. can be
these
done.
are the best options. As to just if they want, they can contact you, and they have your name in that. The SRF is easy to find your email address, and they can contact you and you can address to the principal investigator of this project. I think will be the best. Thank you very much, Iram, because it has been very instructive. Thanks, and very interesting talk. Well, thank you very much, Oscar. I want to introduce Dr. Blanco to the audience. Dr. Blanco is a Colombian researcher who works at the Soleil Synchrotron in France. He has a background in accelerator physics and is currently involved in the accelerator renovation project at Soleil, the Agri program, for what I understood. Thank you very much, Oscar, for accepting to be here, and please, you have the word now.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It was very nice to hear from you, and again, the idea of having an accelerator in Latin America, that would be fantastic. I come from a background that is different from the light sources. I started working in colliders, and therefore, this is a very introductory talk. So what I decided was to address it in a very broad way. One other thing, you will see that the presentation is in Spanish. I thought that the presentation was dedicated to Spanish speakers. So please, I would like to apologize in advance, because you will see Spanish all over the place. But more important than that is sometimes it might have some misspellings because I work on a French keyboard. So it would be a mixed. So what I would like to basically try to show to everybody is that when we talk about radiation in a synchrotron light source, but in most of the radiation of the accelerator facilities, we were talking about a particular kind of radiation that is a photon radiation. It is basically light, and if you decompose it in the standard mode of particles, we refer to a photon, which is the basic unit of what is the interaction of electromagnetic waves. It's a very broad topic, and therefore you will need a large amount of equipment and a large amount of knowledge in order to get to know what the photon is and what the photon can do for you. But in a sense, it's just a light. It is a conception of how the electromagnetic world interacts. And with that in mind, of course, we have now very well evolved light sources. But this is just because we have started to work on it since a very long time. I include myself in this group because this is a group of scientists. I'm not so well renowned yet, but we will see in the future. But at the moment, what we have is that it is more than 100 years of knowledge that has been accumulated since early studies of what is the behavior of electrical particles, to equations that actually show the wave behavior of these interactions, to what is the quantization of this into photons, and further away. In what happened is that this was being finally understood as an observation in a facility. And this was the first time that we saw what was the synchrotron light source by the 1950s, which is one of the lightest, one of the points to highlight in this kind of facilities. Of course, there's radiation basically as a kind of particle, but it's an interaction. It has some spectrum, and this ranges in the changes of frequencies that will be scaled also to energies, but also to wavelength. What I would like to highlight here is that although we normally are able just to see part of this spectrum in what we call visible, which is a very narrow part, we will also explore parts that are beyond that, either to higher energies or shorter wavelengths, or lower energies, which means higher, longer wavelengths. And these are UV rays on one side and the infrared rays on the other. But what happens in a facility is that you have this equipment that is able to detect a particular range of this kind of radiation. And in my case, I started to interact with the diagnostics that is required for this kind of diagnosis, let's say of task. When I was working at Daphne. Daphne is a well-known accelerator working for more than 20 years. It to a collisioner at the beginning, so it was dedicated to particle interaction studies. But it also is a source of for a light source. So it is called Daphne Light. What you will see there is that basically we had the typical structure of an accelerator that is dedicated to synchrotron light source, but also to many other projects, which is a LINAC, basically linear accelerator that accelerates particles that are going to be accumulated. And in this case, it's a very small ring of a few tens of meters. I believe the circumference was 30 meters or so. And here you see an example of what this is actually synchrotron light source that seems to be very tender. Actually, it seems to be very large for today's standards, but it was one of the initial studies that they did in order to know the stability of the beam inside the accumulator. This is important because from the accumulator, the beam will be extracted and be injected into another accelerator that is much larger, that is called Daphne, where you have actually the installation of the light sources all around. So the lines where the beam is extracted, the photon beam, I mean. But well, now you know, on top of what all the details of light can give you, you also can understand part of what the beam, how the beam behaves. If you see how does it emit part of its energy into photons. And this is just a brief image of what is the diagnostics of in any accelerator. But of course, it's a machine that has several years, more than 2 decades operating. So there might be ones that are more interesting. Well, I would like to present you here what is the accelerator where I work now. It's the Synchrotron light source in France, nearby Paris. It's called Soleil. It stands for sun in French. It's a 2.75 giga-electron volts facility. It means that electrons circulate on it at that energy, and that means that it's a very convenient setting for a lattice on the order of 356 meters. Inside that, what you will have is several experiments, several photon sources that will be installed all around. To make it simple, this is just a brief description, but you will have on the order of 29 lines operating now in total for the synchrotron light source that is currently working. And for a 300 meters long accelerator, you will have almost like 10 to 15 meters from one line to another. This seems to be a lot, but it's not, because you will need a lot of magnets in between. You will need a lot of diagnostics in between. You will need many protections all around the beam trajectory. So 15 meters, although might seem comfortable, is very compact. So what you will see there is that even though it's a very compact lattice, we have enough space to have a large degree of variation of what the photon sources are. So you basically see here what is the distribution of our photon sources. And I would like to highlight that there are some in blue that will be photon sources that come from dipoles. So it is just a magnet that has 2 poles. This is the reason why it's called dipoles. But there are other structures that compose a magnetic field that is much more elaborated. On those are classified into another regime. So we'll have undulators and wigglers. Here, therefore, we have a large, let's say, a broad application of, or a broad spectrum of what is the photon sources that we are able to profit from this kind of facility. Just to describe what a dipole is, I here have plotted just a small section of the accelerator, and what you see red is exactly what the pictures shows you there, which is a dipole that is located inside the trajectory of the electrons that is going to curve. So it's going to bend part of the electrons into the accelerator circumference. And all over the place you will see another blue structures. These are elements in order to focus the beam, to keep it on the track so that they do not diverge continuously. From these photons, for these electrons, there will be radiation, and this is what you will see. So again, we have a dipole, you have electrons that are coming through this kind of dipole, and what they do generate is a fan. It's a photon fan in their trajectory. This is a very simplified way of seeing it, but this is good enough in order to know that there is a difference between the trajectory of the particles inside the accelerator that are interacting with the magnetic field of the dipole field and wigglers and undulators, as I have mentioned. But you have a photon beam that is passing through. It will be the one that is profited by many of the photons of the experiments. So with that photon beam, you can classify it again into the broad spectrum of photon radiation that I showed just at the beginning, but this time is a little bit complemented, which is what is available at Soleil. And if you see here is the visible light, but just to the left side, you will see that it's the infrared in the near field, in the far field. And also on the opposite side, you will see what is the UV, X-rays, and gamma rays. The lines that you see above are basically the spectrum on which we have sources or experiments that cover this kind of a spectrum. Therefore, we operate either on the infrared side or on the UV and X, soft, tender, and hard X-rays. It's a very broad machine. It's one of the main characteristics of Soleil. It has the possibility to explore to provide beam to many experiments. And on top of that is a synchrotron light source that has been operating very stable over the years. So we rarely have an issue with our operation. But of course, the operation is not that interesting. More or less, what is important for the experiments is how much is the brightness that you can have. And this is just as an introductory part, I will decide to say what is brightness. So what is brightness is just the amount of photons that you will get in a unit of area and solid angle and spectrum. Therefore, you will have this kind of lines that characterize the number of photons as a function of the energy for each one of the experiments that we have. There you will see plotted some of the lines that characterize the radiation in our facility for some of the undulators and wigglers. Again, this slightly more elaborated constructions of a dipole field. Radiation is actually used at Soleil for many uses, for many experiments. But what is basically let's say the most the biggest point, or the most usage of the light at Soleil is to explore what quantum materials would be in the future. How do they interact, and also to explore diagnostics, images for diagnostics in medicine. This is more or less represented here as a very broad kind of a plot. So maybe there are more people that is more expert than me. I basically work on the accelerator, but these are images of that represents what would be possible to study in a synchrotron light source in general, but in particular, what we'll be able to see in terms of the structure of the matter and in the structure of the direction of the spin of particular materials. This, of course, means that we will have to require some stability, but also some dimensions on the beam. And since 1995, when we started this path in order to get sources of light that were similar to the one of the sun or even more intense, we have arrived here now to a moment in time where we have plenty of light sources over the world. So just to highlight that there's, on top of Soleil, on top of the many ones that have been presented by the people that's working here, there are also projects of improving this kind of facilities to improve also the knowledge of what is the structure of matter. And just to highlight the point that was mentioned at the introduction, yes, we are studying now the renewal of our facility, which is somehow sad because it's a facility that has been operated very well over the years. But at the same time, we know that our users will need something that has much more performance in the sense that we will need a beam which has much more brightness. We will need a beam that has smaller dimensions, and we will need the same stability as before, which is, of course, challenging for many people, for many of these facilities that are operating now. We are not the only ones. There are ones that are already operating, like I believe that there were some presentations already for the people of EBS at ESRF. But Soleil is now studying the renewal and is in the TDR phase. So we have already a concept that is still ongoing in order to see what would be feasible and what is required to be changed in order to make the machine as good as possible. And this implies also a change in the density of the elements on the machine and in the diagnostics required for it. The gain is that we go for a somehow bright source to a much brighter source, which is what I wanted to represent with these two suns. And I wanted to let you know that there's also a brief list here of what are different facilities, in particular around the European space, but also it extends over the world. So as I mentioned, there's the well-performed lattice of designed by Pantaleo Raimondi at the EBS and company. So this is one of the main ones that have already achieved part of these goals in order to go for a machine that performs well, what is called a third generation machine, to something new that is a fourth generation machine. But as I mentioned, it's not the only one. And each one has their priorities, let's say their circumference, which is something that might limit at some point the structure. You can have as much elements as you would need, but that would increase the density. And for some of them, in particular the case of Soleil, as we are trying to get a much dense machine, this is one of the biggest challenges. Make everything as compact as possible in order to fit what the facility that we already have. Therefore, at the end, what we will need, what we'll be pursuing is trying to go from a beam that has very large dimensions on the horizontal plane to something that is much more point-like. And this is what is called a diffraction limit. This is when the beam, we have two beams, as I explained before. We have a photon beam, a photon fan, and we have an electron beam. When those two beams start to be of similar dimensions, then they will be interacting. And this interaction is important also from the point of view of the experiments. And this is what is called a diffraction limit. Most of the light sources now are trying to reach this minimum, what would be the minimum resolution of what could be, let's say the maximum resolution, sorry, of what could be possible to do with a synchrotron light source at this stage of technology. I wanted to let you know that there's a website in English also, where you can visit, and as there's a new project that is now ongoing. Of course, there's a need of people prepared not only from the point of view of what I work on, which is the accelerator physics part, but of course the experiments that will be renewed over the time. and there's a huge plan for that. I invite you to consult the CDR, but with this in mind, I believe that is all that I wanted to show for today.
Thank you very much, Oscar. It was a nice presentation from your side. There is now the room is open for questions, comments. Anyone question? If not, I have something, some questions about what you present and according to your experience, which is the direction that a new synchrotron in the Greater Caribbean region has to point out?
I would like to have a facility dedicated to this is called it's not a calibration, but it's called a reference. It's a reference one. So I wouldn't advise to go for a fourth generation light source. I believe so. I will try to construct it because it's a topic that I would like to also to clear out. In order to get a facility of a fourth generation working on any space in any of the communities that have been already built, you will need the experience and also the transfer of knowledge from one generation to another. And this, I believe, has been working well in the European space for many years. Apart from Brazil, in Latin America, I see that there's very little construction of that kind of community. Therefore, I would suggest to have a small light source, not a fourth generation one, because also the users need to be somehow found out on the Latin American space. And this is something that is that could be built up over the time. My reference at this moment is a facility that is called MSL2 in Germany. I believe that they work mostly on instrumentation, which is a facility in order to just serve as a reference point for many other facilities that are of a let's say of a much larger dimension. So MLS2 would be one of the references, or let's say the scale of what will be. I would believe it would be possible right now in Latin America. It's a machine on the order of maybe 50 to 60 meters long. It's a facility with an intermediate energy, but it's dedicated basically to instrumentation. It's something that would provide not directly to users, but to provide enough transfer knowledge and provide technology to other facilities in order to construct something much more solid in Latin America. After a few generations,
this facility is always compatible with low energy experiment, no?
Yes, yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this would be cover most of the topics that they generate more people behind, more research behind there in Latin America. That is the cultural heritage and the agriculture and plants and this kind of studies, as we saw in the previous talk, no?
I believe that there are plenty of usages in Latin America that have not been yet explored. I recall now one case in particular, which is the exploration of the Guaviare region in Colombia. Due to the inner conflict, there were plenty of years that this region was abandoned. So basically, you have forest over the place, over the structures. But now that that region or that zone is starting to open up to the world. There are already several visitors, most of them researchers, which are trying to look for what is missing in the history of Latin America, but in particular in this case, Colombia. So this kind of usages have not been pursued yet. Of course, this is something that could be profit.
Okay, there is Lawrence Norris has added a link in the chat according to have the CDR for the Soleil upgrade, and that's something that is the conceptual design report that can be consulted in the case that you are interested. You send the chat section of this team session. Okay, thank you very much, Oscar. It was a pleasure to have you here. Gaston is a Franco-Argentinian because I had now almost French now, but from Argentinian origin. That researcher that who is not only one of my scientific collaborators, but also a friend of mine. Furthermore, he holds a permanent position at the ID15 bid line at the SRF, where he has been working since, I think, 2007. It's okay?
Yes.
And he is also responsible for the high pressure laboratory at the SRF. You have the word now.
So, hello everyone. Many thanks, Juan Ángel, for the very nice presentation. It's a great pleasure to try to tell you what I'm doing at the SRF, and I try to transmit a little bit my history and my travel to Grenoble, and try to see how we can give some information. So the idea is I will give you some ideas of what we are doing. I'm not sharing the screen. Sorry.
Not yet.
Not yet. I was allow set window. Screen. Sorry. Screen 2. Allow. So now.
Perfect.
Now it's okay.
It's working perfectly.
I don't see what I'm saying, but you see my pointer?
Yeah. We can see the pointer.
Perfect. So the idea is I will be talking on what we are doing on high pressure at the SRF, and try to give you some ideas of what is the new capabilities that we can do at the EBS, but most importantly is try to transmit a way that we are trying to work, or we are trying to democratize as much as we can the high pressure in terms of user support, and this can perhaps be extrapolated to the other type of facilities like the new synchrotron, and how to perhaps keep and use this type of organization, let's say. As we already mentioned before, I would like to give you some reasons why I'm here. So as it was presented at the beginning by Gemma, and most of you are aware, the Synchrotron is a very big consortium of 22 countries operating since a long time. And this is one of the reasons that I put here. Reason number one is because this is very international. And the nice thing of being international is you can find many different people coming from many different origins, and these promote interaction and constructive ideas, because everyone has his own experience, his own ways to say things, and the best is to try to to communicate and to construct. So that's why here is a very nice experience, and there are many other synchrotrons working like this, in which you can really exploit this international atmosphere. The second reason is more on the acknowledgement, because I'm not speaking by my own. I didn't do all the things I'm presenting. It's just a small contribution, but it's a big effort from a big team of people working around. So not only on the beamlines, here I put on top of the people working on the beamlines. Mohamed is responsible for ID27, Michael Hanflan, ID15B, but there is not only the people who is presenting, there's a lot of effort from behind in terms of beamlines and support and technicians, but also from what we don't see is the machine side, the engineers designing the experiments, the beamlines. So this is a big effort, and also the interaction between beamlines and people from different beamlines. This makes every institution very powerful because we are able to construct all together, let's say. And this coupled with the international thing, I think this is very, very important. So concerning my origin, I was born in Buenos Aires some years ago, let's say, before yesterday. So I studied physics at the University of Buenos Aires. I finished my PhD in 2005. And as you can see, let's say, this is one thing that is not important here, but I would like to mention is that we finished quite old in terms of age compared to European people. But the time that we spend is because this is formation for the scientist. So at the end, I don't know, well, this is just nothing to do here, but we have a lot of experience coming from these very long studies that is important and is difficult to put in a CV. So this is just a small mention. And I was working at that time in the study the manganites under high pressure already, studying transport properties and the ferromagnetic transition. Then I came to Grenoble to do one year postdoc at the Institut Néel. It was the former CERTVT, low temperature laboratory. And then I moved to the SRF to study to the ID27 beamline as first postdoc, studying mostly adding to these studies that I did before the pressure effect on the crystal structure, coupled with what we were doing before with the transport properties. And finally, I became scientist on ID27, another 5 years there. And since 2015, I'm beamline operator manager. This is a kind of mix between engineer and scientist, coupled between the two high pressure beamlines, 15 and 27, and the high pressure lab. And then, we expand a little bit what we were, the type of science that we were doing, but it was always concentrated on condensed matter physics under high pressure, coupled with high temperature and low temperature. So I would like to present very briefly. Perhaps it's a little bit too long what I want to say, but we can cut parts. So first of all, I will try to give you an overview what is high pressure and why it's interesting. Okay, and then give you an idea of what the high pressure lab is doing. Okay, or what type of support we are giving on the high pressure lab, and then some examples of the two beamlines using X-ray diffraction at extreme condition at the SRF. So science at extreme condition is a very multidisciplinary research, starting from biology, in which we can study material, life entities at room pressure, room temperature. Sorry. But we can, for example, study fishes that are living at the end of the deep part of the Mariana Trench. So we are supporting a pressure of 1 kilobar. That doesn't seem to be too big compared to what geophysicists are doing, but can have a big impact, a huge impact on the crystal structure or the activity of these complicated molecules that are the proteins or the enzymes. Okay, so this is the low part of the pressure range. If we go to the other side, in which we will study, for example, the Earth, in which at the center we estimate the pressure of the order of 3.5 million atmospheres. Okay, we have a huge range of pressure variations here in the middle, in which physics, chemistry, material science is working on, and in which we can also couple not only high pressure but also high temperature. So in itself, it's very multidisciplinary, and I'm working on a beamline where mostly force or are mostly interacting with people coming from many different scientific origins. So that means this is another reason why I am here and why we choose to stay here is because we interact very often with very different origins of science. So this makes the interaction very, very interesting. So why high pressure is interesting? Just to give you some energy scales, if we are considering temperature, if we are at 300 Kelvin, we can transform to energy, and this is correspond to 26 millielectron volt. If we apply 100 Tesla in a 1 magnetobore atom, the energy associated with this high magnetic field is the order of 6 millielectron volt. But if you apply pressure on, for example, gold, and we only apply 20 GPa, and we follow the equation of state, and we do the variation of the free energy, we already apply energy change of the order of 100 millielectron volt. And if we consider, for example, the case of sodium, in which at 20 GPa we have a variation of 1.2 electron volt, in that case we can see that pressure is a very powerful parameter, because we can really apply huge changes in the free energy, and this can allow us to really map a very wide range of the of the phase diagram, added to temperature, and with magnetic field, we can really have a very large view on what we are able to study. So nowadays, we are able to generate pressure of the order of 3 megabar, it's 300 GPa, that is more or less the pressure at the center of the Earth. And that means that we are able to induce energy variations very, very large. And let's say these are not the limit, because if we are willing to study other exoplanets, then the pressure can be much larger, so the variations in energy much bigger. So how we generate high pressure? So ideally, here we have a pressure scale. So if you remember from secondary school, pressure is the force divided the surface. So we have two ways. One is to increase the force. The other is to reduce the surface. So if we take an elephant, we put it in a nail shoes, we can generate the order of 1 GPa. So this is very easy. If we want 2 GPa, we just need to put one elephant on top of the other. But the problem is to keep them fat. So the problem is they can get thin. So that's why we have the different apparatus. And the one we are working every day is with a diamond anvil cell, in which we have two diamonds, like the one we use in jewelry, but with the polished tip here at the border. And then we confine a region in a gasket. That is where we will consider a pressure chamber, and the sample is living there inside with, and close to it, a pressure marker that allows us to measure the pressure. And the idea is the beam will be passing and hitting the sample here. So to give you an idea, the dimension of the sample is the order of 50 microns, 0.05 millimeters. So that means that if we really want to study small samples or very high pressure, we need to have a very intense and focused X-ray beam. And that is why the upgrade of the EVA, the SRF and the EVAs allow us to have much more focused and intense beams. So in order to reach this very, very high pressure, this is the high pressure is technological, a very high technological activity in which in the last years, we were able to increase the pressure limit to the order of 6 megabars, okay, the order of 6 million atmosphere, by modifying the shape of the diamond. So we are drilling on the diamond a particular shape in order to generate this very small cavity with this shape of the diamonds that allows us to study materials up to 6 million atmosphere. And this allows us to really expand the pressure temperature domain of the samples. And for example, the most interesting case of the holy grail of high pressure was the metallization of hydrogen, in which it was shown by the group of Paul Loubert at Soleil, in Synchrotron Soleil, that we really see the metallization of hydrogen at the pressure of 4.2 million atmosphere. And this was really important result, because this shows us that we are able to reach this pressure and to do measurements and these very extreme pressures, and show that this can be extrapolated to other systems. So what we do in terms of user support and why the high pressure lab exists at the SRF, this is because high pressure is a very expanded activity all over the ring. At the SRF, there are many beam lines doing high pressure. Some of them, like ID15B, ID27, are fully dedicated to high pressure, but others that have a big part of the activity that are dedicated to high pressure. So the idea is that what we want to do is to give support to users that don't have the equipment in the home laboratory to be able to develop these experiments on the beam. There is also a big activity of dynamic compression, but I will mostly concentrate on static compression, means that the pressure that we can apply and we can measure for long times using diamond anvils. And this is the fourth reason why I'm here, because this is a very nice place where to be and to develop research and instrumentation. So there are different types of high pressure cells that we have at the SRF. I will mostly concentrate on the diamond anvil cell, as I said before. And we can couple this small device that is the size of my hand, roughly. Okay, this is a 50 millimeter diameter by 30 millimeters thick. That this small device can be coupled with cryostat, so to cool down, then can be heated up with the resistive heating, or we can couple with lasers and really reach very high pressures, okay, and temperatures. And at the same time, we can couple this, if we do it non-magnetically, we can couple with high magnetic field and pressure. So we are able to modify three thermodynamic variables: high pressure, low temperature, and high magnetic field. So the high pressure lab is located here in one part of the ring, and the purpose of the lab is to give support to users that come from their home institutions to develop their extreme condition experiments on different beam lines on the SRF. So we can loan equipment, diamond anvil cells. We can at the same time develop some particular activities or the specific diamond anvil cells or equipment to be able to adapt for particular experiments. So nowadays we are able to follow more or less with the equipment that we have, reach 2 million atmosphere in the lab and temperature as high as 5,000 Kelvin or in excess of this, depending on how the sample coupled with the laser, and to cool down to something like 3 Kelvin. Okay, and all this we can move inside in a way we would like to move. Okay, so we have a large space where to work and a gas loading machine, but this is the laser drilling. These are some equipment that are very useful. We are also in good collaboration, and we collaborate quite a lot with the chemistry lab, in which we can prepare air-sensitive samples, and we have some offline equipment to test and check our samples before the experiment. And the idea is, in this, we will concentrate a good number of equipment in order to provide the users and the in-house interest to be able to develop on site, say at the SRF, the high pressure activity. And at the same time, we try to keep memory of what we have been developing, because in general, the problem, the ring is so large that we don't need to cross each other every day. So the idea is to keep the lab as a place where we have some memory and we transfer from one beamline to the other, passing through the lab. So we try to standardize and as we show at the end, how to try to keep and to transfer from one beamline to the other the expertise that we were able to keep. And I think this is very important, because not only works for this particular activity, but it can be useful for many other type of labs in which we force the collaboration. So I will just present some examples in time that is remaining. ID15B and the new ID27. So this is just to show you how the beam improved. So we have at the beginning on the old SRF a beam that was roughly 7 millimeter large, and now it become in the source of the order of 0.7, so 10 times smaller. And this can be transferred immediately in a much better focusing of your X-ray beam. So nowadays at the ID27, one of the high pressure diffraction beamlines, a beam that is below 300 nanometers. So we are really able to probe the samples that are up with pressures applied of the order of 3-4 megabars, 3 million atmosphere. At the same time, now we have harmonics and in the X-ray generation that are much narrower and very symmetric. So that means that we can use the full harmonic to do diffraction, meaning that we will have much more flux, and but at the same time we will not degrade the quality of this of the diffractor. So ID15B was upgraded in 2016. We are working at fixed energy of 30 kiloelectron volt, and we can focus down the beam up to 1 by 2 micron in vertical and horizontal direction. And this is what we can see here at the position where the green line finishes, is where the X-ray beam is focused, and there is where our diamond anvil cell will be placed. On the back, we have a 2-dimension detector that allows us to collect the diffraction of the sample, and we are able to control pressure and temperature more or less in this pressure range, pressure temperature phase diagram, as you can see here. Okay, we can couple with resistive heating to reach pressures at the order of 1300 Kelvin. We can install a helium flow cryostat to cool down to 3 Kelvin, and soon we are developing a laser heating system to be coupled with the beamline, and we install on the beamline. So the idea is what we can do. Also on ID27, this is a very brand new beamline in which we were using the fact that we are very far in the ring from the ring, so we are outside the original ring. So we have a beam, a hatch that is much larger, is 7 meter horizontal dimension and 10 meters long. Okay, in which we have 3 different KB systems to focus the beam, 3 different goniometers for 3 different activities, and the beam that can be moved in and out. Okay, and again, we can be coupled with resistive heating, helium flow, cryostat, and laser heating setup. So this is a view of the experiment setup. Well, you see it's very crowded, but the idea is we are able to change easily from one place to one setup to the other, because all these granites can be moved easily from one position to another. Okay? So I would go to some examples now, and the first is that now, as the beam is quite small, and we are able to have a very focused beam, we are able to really map samples that are very inhomogeneous. For example, here you can see a sample that is at 200 GPa, 2 million atmosphere. It's a reaction between gold and nitrogen. So what we can see is that each point of the sample is a little bit different. It's not fully homogeneous due to the synthesis, and we are able to do single crystal diffraction on these very small peaks. So one example, for example, is the solution of the structure of this barium nitrogen compound, okay? That is a collaboration with Dominique Daniel and Maxime Bikov and Leonid Dubrovinsky from Germany, in which they were able to solve this new structure of these very complex systems due to the fact that now we have a very small beam and we are able to really probe the different position of your diamond and cell. At the same time, now we have a very intense beam and also very powerful detector in terms of dynamic range. So we are able, for example, to study in this YBCO, yttrium, barium, copper, oxygen, high TC superconductor, to study the appearance of this charge density wave associated with this pseudo gap that was already shown or mentioned that it was existing on this particular phase region of the phase diagram of these cuprates. And we are able to solve at the same time the full structure of the sample. And if you apply some strain, you can induce some modifications from a type of 2D charge density wave to a much 3D way, in which you see that the peak now is well defined. Sorry. Okay. So the idea is we are really able to apply uniaxial pressure on your sample and follow the appearance of these charge density wave peaks that are 7 orders of magnitude lower in intensity with respect to the mean Bragg intensity of the structure, meaning that we have now the possibility to develop this type of studies. At the same time, now we can put some optics and have a beam that illuminates the full sample. And as you can see here in the bottom part, I don't know if I will be able to come back. You see here we can do tomography of your sample. The thing is we cannot fully open this, have a full reconstruction because the cell has a certain opening, but we are able to do a high resolution phase contrast imaging on the sample. Okay, so other examples, for example, the synthesis of arsenic nitride, in which this is a nice example because the sample was air sensitive. So we had to prepare the sample in the chemistry lab, come to the beamline to do diffraction, then move to another beamline to do laser heating and come back. This we do a certain number of times until we got the good sample. But the thing is, the fact that we are able to couple and to know all these experiments that are available on site, we can develop this type of experiment. And this was during COVID, so we were alone here on the ring. So it was a little bit of fun, but we were able to solve, again, these samples were quite inhomogeneous due to the synthesis of the laser heating, but we were able to solve the structure and get a new simple bonded cubic arsenic nitride synthesized at high pressure and high temperature using laser heating on ID15B. So this is a kind of examples in which the collaboration between the beamlines and with the different support labs allow us to have successful experiments. I don't know how much time. I'm a little bit lost in time. Still have
you still have 10 minutes.
Okay.
Well, 5 minutes.
Okay. So I will try to summarize. So again, another example is what we can do using laser heating. For example, we can study water at very high pressures. So what we can see is that if we compress water and you warm up, you see the appearance of a new phase appearing at very high pressure and high temperature, showing that we have a new cubic phase of ice, of water, okay, that can explain some particular properties that have been predicted in Neptune, for example. So it means that we on one side we have the experimental evidence that the new phase of water is existing at this particular high pressure that are very large in terms of pressure and very high in temperature, but also can give some explanation of how these metallic regions in Neptune can be explained due to with experiments. At the same time, now exploiting the new capabilities in terms of coherence of the X-ray beam, we are able to, for example, illuminate this 100 nanometers platinum single crystals. And now, as you reduce the size of your nanoparticles, now the Bragg spot of this single crystal are not, let's say, will be a nice Bragg spot, but at the same time you will have some fringes of interference around it due to the fact that you reduce the dimension of the nanoparticle. So if you are able to follow and really see how this reflection of this Bragg peak is in terms of angle, you can have a full reconstruction of your nanoparticle, and you can reconstruct not only the shape of the nanoparticle, but also get the strain state. So we can couple this with high pressure, and so we can see how evolves not only the shape of the nanoparticle, but also the strain state inside the nanoparticle. So this is a complete new activity that we are trying to learn, because we had no access to this fraction of coherent beam. So now we are opening a new type of experiment that we were not thinking that we were able to be done under high pressure. And one last example that I would like to show you, because it was interesting at the beginning, is how to study liquids at extreme conditions. So as we said, the X-ray beam is passing through the sample. So the sample is sitting here and is surrounded by these two diamonds. And the thing is, as soon as the beam is passing through, you will have not only diffraction coming from the diamond, but also you will have Compton scattering. So this will be a kind of diffuse signal. So it can be seen like this. And this dotted line here is the signal coming only from the diamonds, okay? And as soon as you put a sample that is very light, for example, in this is the case of potassium, it's not very light, but it's quite light in terms of atomic number, you will see that the contribution of the background is very big compared to what we get from the sample. So this is a big problem, because if you really reduce the atomic numbers, for example, if you want to study hydrogen, the problem is the signal will be masked by the background of the diamonds, of the Compton of the diamond. So for this, there were many ways to try to reduce the signal coming from the sample, as you can see here. And one was to try to use a multi-channel collimator. Multi-channel collimator is only a series of slits that allows you to reduce the signal coming from the surroundings, because it's blocked by the slits. Okay, so at the end, what you see when you rotate this apparatus is to clean the sample, the background around the sample, and you can pass from something like you can see here. This is kind of argon at 1 GPa. This is the signal of the background, and this is the signal of the sample plus the background, to the black lines in which you can really see the reduction of the background and the improvement of the signal over background of your sample. And this is not only valid for liquids, but also for solid materials, as you can see here in this particular example. So why this was interesting, because if you study, for example, hydrogen, as I said, the signal using the multi-channel collimator at 33 kiloelectron volt, as you can see here, is very low, so almost inexistent. But if you reduce the energy, you can see that the broad peak of the first sharp diffraction peak of the liquid is appearing, meaning that we are able to study, even if the signal is weak, we are able to study this hydrogen at very low pressure and low temperature. So what we did is to follow the position and the intensity of the peak in function of pressure at room temperature, but also at low temperature, and we were able to follow it in function of pressure. Okay, and we can compare here in black dots the signal coming from neutrons. So the thing is that to get signal from neutrons, you need to count very long. Okay, and now with counting times of the order of minute, we were able to get the signal, and we are able to also to couple with low temperature, and we were able to show how we pass from one type of liquid in hydrogen at very low density to another type of liquid, and this to show possibly the effect of the 0-point motion of renormalization and interaction of the anharmonic to a harmonic oscillation of the atoms. Okay, so the idea of this, why I wanted to show you that, is because the use of this multi-channel collimator, we use it for the study of batteries. So again, we keep this information about one type of device that was perhaps useful for another beamline, and we were studying this type of batteries. This is the commercial batteries that we're using that are rechargeable, something like the order of a 10 millimeter diameter thick. And if you have very high energy, you can pass through and do diffraction. The only thing is that as your material is very large in terms of penetration of the beam, you will see that here in black, you can see the broad of your peaks, meaning that the quality of the diffraction pattern will be degraded due to the dimension of your sample, and the fact that you cannot anymore do any type of interpretation or refinement, because now you are summing up all over the sample. Okay, so the fact that we use this multi-channel collimator allow us to really probe particular position of the battery and really do in operando studies and really measure the temperature inside the battery without touching the battery itself. And this is a paper that was recently published in a high impact paper. But the idea is that this transfer of information, the way that we are able to transfer from one beamline to the other, allow us to develop this type of experiment. So with this, I would like to finish and say, okay, the challenge nowadays is to exploit the new capabilities with the new machine and extend for sure the pressure temperature domain, but most importantly to try to standardize the type of equipment and experiment we are doing in order to try to exploit the experience that we have. And the important is to try to keep this level of offline and online facilities to perform the most challenging experiment, and increasing the synergy between the beamlines and the different support labs that allow us to improve and to do our best with the things that we already develop, and we don't need to develop 2 or 3 times the same thing. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gastón, for this very interesting talk, and it was very funny when you put the elephant with the shoes. Nice touch. Now the room is open for questions. Please remember to raise the hand. That is in the icon hand if you have any questions. Yeah, Katalin?
Hi, I cannot share.
Well, now you can.
Okay.
Now you can.
Okay.
You can
Hey.
enable your camera if you want.
Hi.
Hello,
Hi,
Katalin.
Gastón. Hi. I just have a curiosity because
Yes.
you showed this CDI high pressure.
Yes.
Do you think there is a user community prone to do this kind of thing? Because I was looking into the literature about this, and there is this study in 2015, I think, about the gold particle, nanoparticle, and then you have this platinum, and then besides that, there's not much into this kind of thing. So I'm curious because I'm asking for ALBA too, and I think that's why.
Yes. So let's say the thing is, let's say if we try to couple, how to say, I think there are many systems in which we don't need to go to these very particular cases in which you have a single crystal of gold or platinum that is grown in a particular way. I think there are many discussing with the people doing mineralogy or this type of things, or nanomaterials. There are many cases in which you have this type of materials in which you have very small single crystals of the order of certain hundreds of nanometers, that in which this technique can be useful. The thing is, again, we have a problem of language. We are speaking a certain language, we have certain questions, and we have certain answers. From their side, they are other questions and other answers. So the difficulty is how to extrapolate and how to make the mixture in order to be able to answer the question that they want to answer. So the community is not there. There is not too much people coupling the two things, or even there is not too much people doing this BCDI. But I think it's a way where we can really exploit and develop new type of experiment. It's not only for this particular, but there are many things.
But you are going into this, or it is ID01?
No, they are coming to us. Let's say ID27. This was done on ID27 with people from ID1. The problem is the software behind. Again, you can do this. Is just you do the rocking curve of one reflection, and then we have many of these images. Okay, and when with a very powerful with some software behind, you are able to reconstruct and get the particle shape. So the thing is, we don't know how to do it. But we know how to apply pressure, and we have now a beam that is very coherent. They come because they know how to do it, but the quality of their data is not, let's say, of the beamline is not good to do this type of experiment. So it's a kind, again, of complementary in which we need to create the community in one sense. So it's not
thank you.
there. But there
I was curious because I was looking into this because I was, and then from 2015, and then you have this one, there was nothing, and then maybe I was thinking I was missing something.
No. Let's say we did it, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like this. Nothing is published yet. But again, the question is, on one side, you can say, well, the shape of the particle changes this way, but what we can extract from this? Because the images are very nice, but now we need to have something behind. We need so that's why there are other communities doing this type of nanoparticles in which they can be interested. The thing is, we need to go and look for them. And this is where it gets a little bit difficult.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I have another question. Is that yesterday we have in the meeting some of some person from the audience comment that in Jamaica there is a strong crystallographic community, and you are a specialist in X-ray diffraction, related synchrotron-based X-ray diffraction. So, in a very basic question, which are the minimum requirements that that a synchrotron has to have to get a X-ray beamline diffraction, X-ray diffraction beamline?
Let's say if you have quite, let's say, you need a monochromatic beam, but not a very high monochromatic. Let's say 10 to the minus 4 delta E over E is enough. So this is a silicon standard monochromator, and then with the diversion that is not too big. Because like this, you have you don't degrade due to the fact that you will propagate a certain distance, and then you need a detector. The more expensive is the detector, or the bigger is the detector, then you will be able to do. If you want to do single crystal, it will be much faster. If you want to do powder, again, it will be also would also be nice. But again, I would say this: to do crystallography is one of the easiest way to start, because you don't need much in terms of equipment. Okay, you need a detector, you need a sample stage, and a beam, but this is more or less the standard things. And already with the beam that is not so small, you can also add, let's say, immediately you can start with temperature, but you can start with some high pressure, not very high, but in any case, there are many things to be done and to study up to 10 GPa, let's say. Everything that is magnetism or more related to biology or pharmaceutical application, this is very, very low pressure, is more than enough.
But from the machine point of view, there is no one special requirement, no?
No, let's say if you are able to get the beam that is of the order of 30 kiloelectron volt, 20, 30 kiloelectron volt is already quite well to cover and to have a large covering of the reciprocal space.
Okay, thank you very much, Gaston. Yeah, we can see perfectly.
Okay,
Let
good.
me introduce you. Dr. Diana Bedoya is a Mexican postdoctoral researcher at the CCPO beamline at the Electra Italian Synchrotron. She recently received the Mexicanos Distinguidos 2022 award from the Consulate of Mexico in Milan, in Italy. So we are honored to have you here, Diana. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. I was really happy to participate in this. I didn't know that they were planning on maybe a Latin America, Caribbean synchrotron, and I find that it's going to be very good for science in Latin America. So since I didn't know what to present, since I saw that there would be also many beamline staff from different synchrotrons, I decided more to give an overview to people who want to come to do research in a synchrotron, what they should do, which are the ways of entering. And the way I would like to start is by saying something about me and how am I now working here in a synchrotron. So I did my bachelor's in physics in Mexico in la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Morelos. While I was there in my second year, I went for a summer internship to the Fermi National Laboratory. That was with collaboration that there was with Mexico and with particle accelerators physics, that they were trying to push further the science and to bring also Mexico into it. And so there was this opening to participate into a summer internship in several accelerator laboratories. And so I was chosen to go to Fermi National Laboratory, and it was a nice experience. Later on, when I finished my bachelor in physics, I did a master's in modeling and simulation of complex realities, and that was in ICTP. This master's doesn't exist as such, but there is something similar. So ICTP is the International Center for Theoretical Physics, but it has a greater objective on supporting developing countries. And so ICTP is funded by the UNESCO, and they fund many projects in which we can help developing scientists to do science and to improve their science by giving access into Italy or other places in the world. Then I did a TRIL program, as Frederick explained previously, and that TRIL program was actually with CISA and Synchrotron. And the way it worked is they funded me for a year to do a particular research. The professor already in CISA got in contact with the ICTP, the person in charge with the TRIL program, and they wrote like a project. They prepared everything, and I just arrived, and I was funded by that. What I could see from that is that it was not so difficult to get the funding if you already have the connections established. So the first thing is that you need to get an open connection with the laboratory where you would like to go. Then I did my PhD in neuroscience at CISA. CISA is another school that's here in Trieste. It's a Scuola Internazionale di Studi Superiori Avanzati. And they have several PhD programs. They are all fully funded. They have in condensed matter physics, they have in neuroscience, they have in mathematics. So there are several PhDs, and the only requisite for entering is you have to do an exam. So if you pass the exam, then you're fully funded. So if some students or some supervisors are saying here there are some opportunities. Then I did several postdocs. I did one postdoc in the CCBO beamline where I'm working now. I did a postdoc in the TwinMIC beamline, which is a soft X-ray microscopy and X-ray fluorescence beamline. I did a postdoc at Monash University in Australia. And then again, I came back to CCBO. Not exactly, I mean, it's working in Electra, but funded by another institution called Area Science Park. And my next step now is I won a Marie Curie Fellowship. So I will be soon going to Australia. It's a collaboration between Australia, ICGV, which is another center here in Trieste, and with the Synchrotron in Trieste. So I spent too much detail saying what I've done because I wanted to go through each of the institutions that I've been going through, because that's the ones that gives you the opportunity of coming here and doing science, no? So the synchrotrons I have been, of course, Electra, but I've also done some beam time in the Canadian Light Source in the mid-infrared beamline. I've been in the SRF in ID21 with Iram Castillo. He invited me for some experiments. I was in the Diamond Light Source with Burkhard Kaulich when they were still implementing the beamline. And I've been also in the Australian Synchrotron while I was there at Monash University in the infrared beamline. No? So talking about these different institutes where you can have access and via ICTP, there is this diploma program that it's a program that it's just after the bachelor's. So you see that here the requisites is having a bachelor, but also having a master's is good in physics, mathematics, to be under the age of 28 and being from a UN member country. And it's for developing countries. Here they don't make distinction as one of the people from the public said that they did distinctions. In this one, there is no distinction. So it's just from developing countries. We have to check all the developing countries that are in the UN site. And this diploma program is 1 year. And usually what I can tell you is that they select 10 for each of the programs, 10 people, and they receive hundreds of applications. And the way on getting in is to have really good recommendation letters from your professors. So if you're a professor, you really have to support your student and say why he should be taken. And if you're a student, you have to find the best recommendation that someone can give you to reach there. And as you can see, they have several topics. And I have to say that you will see later that it doesn't matter what you study. At the end, you have the elements to do more science, and in particular in the synchrotron, where there is such a wide variety of topics that are addressed. So then they also have a master's program. They have now 3 masters. In my time, it was only 1, which was like this one here. And sorry, you cannot see my pointer, but laser pointer. This one is the one similar to mine. This one is done rotating between Trieste, Torino, and Paris, and it lasts 2 years. But then they also have a master in high performance computing and in medical physics. And they fund you completely. It's a very low scholarship, I have to say, but it's doable. And they're very intense, the programs. So another thing is that ICTP now it's funding some PhD programs, and it's PhD programs in the University of Trieste. And that is for these topics: physics, including astrophysics, condensed matter physics, theoretical physics, medical physics, and biophysics, earth science, and industrial and information engineering. So also you can apply for a PhD in University of Trieste, and you can see if ICTP can fund you. Then we go into the TRIL, the Training and Research in Italian Laboratories. And here, the interesting thing is that you can be funded up to 1 year. And you have the aim of the program is to promote through direct contacts and side-by-side high-level research collaborations between Italian scientific community and individuals, groups, and institutions in developing countries. This program thus addresses an important aspect of the mission of ICTP, namely to help form and strengthen a permanent scientific expertise in developing countries, cognizant of local needs and resources of the frontiers of science. So in this case, I think that the objective of this program could be quite relatable to the fact of Latin American people wanting to learn more about synchrotron. So again, the way of getting access to this is, first of all, getting in contact with the technique that you would like to do and discussing how it could be done. After you have a greater idea of what you want to do, then you can see if it could be funded by the TRIL program. For students, it is a very good source of information, the Hercules School. The Hercules School is 5 weeks of course, and you go to many synchrotrons, and they receive a very theoretical courses, but they also get practical courses. So this can be very interesting for your students or even for yourself. They have a cost, but they also have some grants for emerging countries. So it's a matter of informing yourself how could you get access to that grant. So in particular, I will focus my talk more on infrared spectroscopy, since it's the technique that I've used the most. But I've also worked, as I mentioned before, in X-ray microscopy and fluorescence, but I think you have also heard many of those today. So infrared spectroscopy, what we're studying is the vibration of molecules. As you can see from the whole electromagnetic spectrum, we have the near infrared and we have the far infrared. Mainly, I've been focused in the mid infrared, although we're extending into the far infrared in the beamline I'm working right now. Where mid infrared is mainly sensitive to organic matter, and in that case, also to biological samples, which has been mostly what I've studied, although I've done also other topics. So we can see with the mid-infrared the intramolecular vibrations, although you can see, depending on the wavelength that you're focused, you can see other details on the sample. What's the advantage of using infrared synchrotron radiation to normal or to conventional infrared is that we have a higher flux, we have a broadband nature, we have the brightness, of course, of the source, we have polarization, and we have time structure. And thanks to this, we can then do many stuff. So in our case, as Frederick mentioned, we have 28 beamlines. We work in CC, which is actually divided into two beamlines. It's the CC-BIO and the CC-MAT. Here you can see how we can actually see the beam, which is a nice thing. We have two end stations. We have the microscopy station. We have the CC-MAT. This is a CC-MAT part, and we also have the CC-nano. So here is a comparison between the normal source and the synchrotron source, and you can see how there is a great improvement with the signal to noise ratio. And as someone mentioned before, we also have the limitation of the diffraction limit. No, so in this case, infrared spectroscopy for long had been limited by the diffraction limit of the wavelength, but now that has been overcome with the entry of these new techniques of nano FTIR by using the tip of an AFM microscope, and now we're entering into that. So yeah, this is the diffraction limit, and of course, since the wavelength is equivalent to the samples that we're measuring, sometimes we're limited to that. So there are two ways of acquiring a spectrum. One of an area. One is by mapping, and in that case, you're concentrating the light into a single point and then moving your stage further and building up the matrix. And the other one is FTIR imaging, in which you actually have a focal plane array, which is an array of single detectors. They're all coupled together. And you can get in one shot 4096 spectra in this case, because we have a 64 by 64 pixel array. So we can also sample in different ways. We can use the ATR geometry, which allows recording surface properties of the sample. And therefore, when you're talking about whole or cell tissue, and you need to monitor the thickness, then it's not useful. Moreover, since there is an intimate contact, then it needs to be pressed into the crystal. So if you don't want the sample to be modified, then this is not the way of using it. Finally, the spectral intensity is not only sample dependent, but it's also wavelength dependent. So depending on the type of sample that you will have, then it will we will have to choose together which method is better. You can also measure in transflexion, which is a double absorption sample technique, where thin samples need to prepare even thinner. And there is a spectral artifact known as the standing waves that we have to fight there, no? And then there is a normal transmission geometry, which is the one preferred. And all these measurements need to be in substrates that are transparent in the mid-infrared. So that means that we don't use the usual glass that they use in biology, but we use things like the calcium fluoride windows. So here we have also the nano end station, where we have an imaging and a photothermal expansion module, and we have an SNIM module, which we have coupled it with a DFG laser and also with a synchrotron. So, sorry, okay. And here is when we couple the synchrotron to the nano end station, and but we're still working on this, because of course we need to have access to the synchrotron while doing this, and so it's still ongoing work. We have as I mentioned, two different ways of sampling, which one is the scattering type scanning near field infrared, which is the SNIM, and the other one is a photothermal expansion. With this, we can reach the level of nanometers resolution, which is going way further than what we usually did before with a microscopy. And so by coupling these many techniques that we have available in the laboratory, we can go from the micro to the nano. So first we can do a search, a whole search, and then go into the detail with the nano. So that is actually going to give a further input into solving some questions, scientific questions. In the near future, I'm not in my laboratory, they're planning on acquiring new instrumentation, and for instance, one of them is the OPTIR, which actually couples infrared and Raman with visible and fluorescence microscopy, and that would also give open many opportunities. This technique also is to the level of 500 nanometers, so it's an in-between between the nano and the micro, and I think with that we can cover the whole range. And we will also have a new offline station of imaging and tomography. and there will be another SNOM station, and that's going to be happening soon. So, sorry, not responding. Hold on. There. Okay. So, topics covered in the beamline. There is a lot of cultural heritage. I mean, there is a lot. We are increasing our number of proposals on cultural heritage, on environmental sciences, but as you can see, for the time being, there is mostly life sciences. In my case, I've worked in so many subjects. And what I want to point with this is, yes, I had a bachelor in physics and a PhD in neuroscience, but I ended up doing material science. I do medicine, I do chemical, just to point out that what I was saying at the beginning, that what gives you all the education, what it gives you is the basis to be able to face other challenges that will come up, such as the ones I'm facing here. I was working in a project actually where we were bridging science and small and medium enterprises. And what this project was about was on bridging, giving the opportunity on small and medium enterprises to have access to our facilities and to show them how science can help solve some of the issues that they may have in their products. So in this case, it was not only infrared, we were also giving them access to tomography and to Raman, and this was done to do it in the nearby region. So Austria was participating and some other institutions in Italy were participating. This was an Interreg project. And also we were doing some science with this, and the interest was also on sustainable materials. So what else? I have worked in this here. I will not spend too much time explaining it, but what I wanted to say is that, for instance, we were able to follow the formation of some phases of the polyvinyl fluoriden aerogels. And this was followed in infrared spectroscopy, but was also examined using X-ray tomography, as well as using Raman. So we combined 3 different techniques that they're all available here in the Synchrotron to characterize a material and to see what was going on inside. As I told you, I've worked in many types of biological materials. I also worked in the implementation of some tomography. Let me see if I can make it work. There was a video here, but I don't think I'm. No, I don't know how to make it work. Yeah, there. So we can also do tomographic IR. Of course, the challenge here is always the analysis, because of you have the whole projections of it, and then you have to do the reconstruction. But it's working quite well. We mounted this mount here that makes it rotate, and we acquire one projection for each degree, but it can be programmed. And as I was saying, we can also couple our results with other techniques, either of synchrotron or outside synchrotron. As we did in this one, it was a collaboration between TwinMIC and CC, which is X-ray fluorescence and microscopy and infrared. Or in this other one that I presented before, where we combined the X-ray microtomography, Raman spectroscopy, and ATR. So I was asking myself, after I have worked and followed so many users during my time, what would be the most important things when you're applying for beam time and when you want to do an experiment at the synchrotron. And before the proposal, the first thing I would suggest to you is talk to the scientist of the beamline, because there you can know the potential of the technique for your purposes. You have to present what are you studying, what are you interested in knowing, and from there you can have a better feedback on what you could do. Don't just write the proposal and apply for it. Try talking to the beamline staff, because they for sure have more expertise on that technique, and they can give you better suggestions on how to implement your experiment. Then for the proposal, again, talk to the scientist, plan the experiment very carefully and in advance, because consider that synchrotron radiation is very limited. So the time that you're going to get is very limited. So you have to be very efficient on how you want to prepare your samples and how you want to plan your acquisitions. And you need to have your objectives clear. For the experiment, be open to learning on how to use the instruments and participate actively in the beam time. The more you participate, the more you will learn, the more you will understand how your experiment is going. So it is very important, this, if it's allowed, of course. I mean, there are some beamlines where you're not allowed to touch the instrument and there's nothing you can do. But if they see that you're interested in doing, then offer yourself, you know. And after the experiment, be proactive in the analysis, because beamline staff, it has very limited time. So the more proactive you are, the more you will learn, but the more you will own your work, you know. So it is this, I think it's very important. And what else? So just as a final touch, how can you apply for beam time? Frederick already mentioned these two, but I would like to add this other one, which is the NFFA and Trieste NFFA, where you can also have access to some of the facilities. So there are, in Elettra, we have several ways of applying to different laboratories. So after you have the availability, or you know that you want to do an experiment in that beamline, then you can search also for other ways of entering, because sometimes there are others more than only the ones that are the normal ones for the whole synchrotron. There are several laboratories that have other collaborations that give you the access to it. So these are other two in which you have access not only to Elettra, but also other laboratories that are not necessarily synchrotron based. So the same happens with CERIC, which you can have access to other laboratories that it's not only synchrotron. So maybe you're planning to do, you have to do a nuclear, an NMR next to this that it's referred to the project. Maybe you can apply for both of them, and you could, you know, get different techniques with your same project, so that you can get a very high quality results from your investigation. And finally, thank you for your attention. This is a picture from my group. I'm currently working for them, but then I will go for this other opportunity that I told you about, the Marie Curie, but I will still be in contact with them, since it's been years that I'm here and since we're still collaborating. So yeah, that's it. And
thank you very much, Diana. It was a very interesting, nice talk. And anyone has a quick question? If not, I have a question, because along this symposium, there is a topic that it has been superficially touched, and then you get into it. Is the initiative to involve the companies into the synchrotron radiation, no, and the synchrotron techniques. I think it's very interesting because when you have you are planning to build a synchrotron in development region, well, you have to include these companies as well, the local companies as well in the radiation facility, because this one could increase the opportunities to extend the synchrotron I don't know, knowledge to get some advantage to the local community to this thing.
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
agree
I
with
mean,
me?
yeah. I do agree. Actually, that was the objective of the of this project, no, to get them to know us and to know that they have access to scientists that can help in their issues, no.
And it was like
Actually,
an open day or something like that, or?
No. It was a 2-year project in which the companies would apply. They would write what they wanted to study or what the problem was. We would decide which techniques would be better to address those, and they would get access to very limited time, but just to have a blink of what they could get, no?
Mm-hmm.
It was a 2-year, 3-year program because it was during COVID, so it got extended another year. But yeah, there was a workshop for the companies. There were companies from Austria. There were companies from not only from Trieste, but from the region.
Because before this project, the company should be aware of the possibilities of the synchrotron, no? Or
exactly. Well, there was also an institution that it's in contact. It's like that they all already have like a
it's like a
direct
liaison, no?
a liaison, exactly. Yeah. That they contacted them saying, look, there is this opportunity. Would you like to participate? So yeah, it was a nice project.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Diana. It was a pleasure to have you here. And now
Thank
we
you
are
very much
passing
for the
to
invitation.
You are Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Joao Rodriguez is a Brazilian researcher who is currently working at the Spanish Alba Synchrotron, as I mentioned, and he has an experience in working at the SRF, most specifically at the ID24 and BN23 B line. Please, Joao, you have the word. Now you are mute. You have to unmute your microphone.
Okay, no? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks for the opportunity to present my work. Well, so my talk, I will briefly describe a bit some results that I have obtained during my postdocs in Madrid and also in RSRF, and a bit of showing a bit my experience, and then you can ask some questions. Okay. So basically, my talk is split in 2 parts. The first part is concerning the RSRF results. I was there working mainly to investigate phase transitions using pressure and temperature. But my key point was to use the X-ray absorption technique. Okay, so I will briefly describe short about this technique. And then I will show some results that we managed to publish very recently. And then I will also end up my seminar with some results from ALBA. In this case, for thermoelectric materials that we also managed to obtain nice results. Okay. as a continuation that Gaston just described a few minutes ago, we can use the high pressure to investigate several properties of the material, but also to synthesize. So this was the main point of my research, to use the high pressure conditions and high temperature synthesize new materials. And in particular, we are trying to now, with the new beamline ID24 and the SRF, we try to investigate also the superconductivity in these new hydrides using laser heating and also high pressure now. So for the superconductivity, it's interesting to know that you can stabilize using very high pressure these new kind of systems, which is a type 1 superconductors. And then the idea of the research to produce new superconductors is to have the critical temperature very near to the home conditions. This is the main goal of this group that also Gaston mentioned previously. And then the main technique, that the main device that we are using is the diamond and view cell. It consists basically in these two diamonds, and in the middle you can put your sample. And then with the probe, which can be the X-ray beam from the synchrotron or a laser from a Raman system, you can characterize your material. Okay, so this is a brief summary about the diamond and view cell. The diamond, they are, you know that these materials they are hard and also transparent. And the transparent depend on the properties of the diamond. Okay, and then we mount our sample like this. We have the two diamonds, and in the middle we have a metal, which is we call it the gasket, and then there is a hole. And in the middle of the hole, you can put your sample. Okay, your pressure gauge, which can be a material like gold or platinum, or also a luminescent material like ruby. And then depending on the properties of the diamond, you can read different pressures. This is the point. Okay, so as we know up to now, we can use in this diamond and view cell reach 300 GPa or 3 megabars in pressure. Okay, so it basically says to us that if you need to increase your pressure condition, you need to reduce your sample. So this is the main point. But the key of my research was to combine high pressure situation, high pressure conditions with X-ray absorption. Different from Gaston. Gaston is working with diffraction. I've been working with X-ray absorption. So the X-ray absorption basically is can be provided by a source in the lab, but for high brilliancy, we need a synchrotron source. Okay, like the SRF or like Alba, or in Brazil like Sirius, or etc. etc. Okay, so basically the idea is to investigate the local structure around the target atom. In this case, we have, for example, here I isolate atom, let's say cobalt, and then if there is nothing around, you see only the X-ray absorption or the absorption coefficients like that. Okay, in this figure. But if you have some local structure, you start to see oscillations. We call this oscillation key of K. And these oscillations are very important because you can later modulate this signal, using the so-called X-abs equation. It seems very big equation, but in the end, it's very easy because it's a oscillation. So there is a sine wave here. There is a frequency, which is the distance for us, but also these oscillations is governed by a wave, which is a three-dimensional wave. So that's the reason we have this rule here, squared for the distance. And we have localization, which is related to the sigma squared, which is the disorder parameter. Since you have your signal from the X-ray absorption, you can determine from the fittings, you can determine the coordination number around the target atom. Okay, in this case, let's say this is cobalt, we have 4 oxygen around. You can determine this quite precisely. You can also determine the distance between the target atom to the neighbor, and also the disorder parameter. The disorder parameter was very important for us. I will show later. And then, for example, this is just a simple example of a material that we have investigated. You have a signal transformed, oscillation signal transformed by the Fourier, and then using a model, a structural model, okay, you can fit all the paths and you discover what is happening locally with the material. So my work was basically combine X-ray absorption, and which is a local technique. Okay, this is an important factor. Combining the local technique with the long-range order technique, which is in our case was X-ray diffraction. Okay. So in the end station of high pressure end station of BN23 ID24 at the RSRF, we basically have this kind of settings. We can put an X-ray detector. We can put also the PRL, which is for measure the pressure inside the cell. We can change in the sample environment. This case was a interesting high temperature cell to measure X-ray absorption under pressure and high temperature. Or you can also mount X-ray fluorescence and do, for example, mappings of very small diluted materials in this beamline. Okay. And additional thing is we need to use the nanopolycrystalline diamonds to have a good X-ray signal. The difference between the nanopolycrystalline diamond to the conventional one is the nanopolycrystalline is a polycrystal. So it means that we don't have glitches that interfere with the X-ray signal. So this was a very important achievement in the community to use this nanopolycrystalline to really have a nice X-ray spectrum, and like this you can treat very nicely all the oscillations that you, if you manage to have in your sample. Okay. So this Gaston also showed this is the facility available at the RSRF in the high pressure lab, especially the cryostat from Gaston, and also the resistive heat reduc. And you can also have diamonds for megabar experiments, and also combining this beamline for X-ray absorption, the Paris and Limburg. And you can combine, you can put also detectors for diffraction and crystal analyze, etc. in IO chambers, ionization chambers. Okay. Saying that, all this the capability of this beamline, I start to investigate the metal insulated transition in the so-called nickelates. Okay. These nickelates are very important nowadays because they can be used to spintronics. So what we investigate during my postdoc there was basically investigate several nickelates with different hurries at the air position of the perovskite. And then we know that if you change the temperature, the pressure, and also the air size, you can play with the air size. You can put lanthanum, lutetium, stallium, yttrium. You can play and you can change the phase. You can really access the phase diagram of this material, which is a very interesting one. So the main point of the insulator of metal transition, this material, is because this insulator metal transition is governed by a so-called charge transfer gap. So change the angle of the sum, for example, the nickel, oxygen, nickel, nickel, oxygen, nickel, you can, in lanthanum, in samarium, for example, you can really open the gap or close the gap, and then this and also you can induce this the pressure and temperature. Okay. So the most important thing is the band gap in this material comes from the combination of these two orbitals, the nickel 3D and oxygen 2p, and then there is a charge transfer, which is already established in the literature, and the most important parameter here could be for us this superexchange angle, which is the angle between nickel, oxygen, nickel. If you change this angle, you will really change the electronic properties and also magnetic properties of this material. So it is a nice playing ground to understand basic concepts in physics mainly the relation between the spin and the lattice, but also for applications, as I mentioned, for spintronics. So the case of studying in this investigation was to use the praseodymium phase, which there is this phase diagram. Basically, you can induce 3 different phases under temperature and 2 phases under pressure. Okay, we have the insulator metal transition to the metal, and from the monoclinic phase to the orthorhombic phase at 130 Kelvin. And then if you heat up this sample, you have the rhombohedral phase, which is very symmetric, but also metallic, like the orthorhombic one. And under pressure, you can also induce the same transition. So my work was to investigate this let's say these 3 transitions, and I using X-ray absorption, and also combined with diffraction. Okay, so the main question for us was what about the local structure and the electronic properties of the insulator metal transition in this nucleus? Which kind of new information I can get using X-ray absorption? And then the main mechanism behind these transitions, especially the case between the insulator metal transition to the insulator metal transition between the insulator and the metal from the monoclinic to orthorhombic. Okay. And this material is very special one because the Niel temperature is exactly the same of the insulator metal transition, which is not the case for different nickelates with different RFs. Okay. So the first result that we have obtained was, okay, we need to check if my material has the nickel-free stabilized at this nickel site. And then we use different references, and then we can do a linear extrapolation. And we have managed to see that, okay, my praseodymium nickel has nickel 3+. So my synthesis was very nice, was very good. As just for mention that this sample was also synthesized under pressure, okay, because nickel need to change this valence. So this is a very unusual valence state, okay. And then we start to investigate the local structure using XAFs. Okay, this is an example of the oscillation XAFs already transformed using the fast Fourier transformer. And then we create a spatial model, which is already reported here, a model that describes this 2 local structure around the nickel atom, which is very important for the insulator metal transition. And also the outer shells, which is a interaction between nickel and praseodymium, and the very outer shell, which is interaction between the nickel and nickel around more or less between 4 and 5 angstroms, very far from the nucleus. Okay. But the very important idea that we have obtained in this work was a special model that we have created with my collaborators in the SRF. Okay, to describe for example, the departure of the Einstein model, when we try to describe the disorder parameter of this material. So if you try to describe the disorder parameter of this material, you have associated to this disorder parameter a so-called Einstein temperature. This is we know from the very basic course in physics. Okay, but if you this curve here is represented by the black line here, but near to the transition, we saw that there is the system does not respect this Einstein model. Okay, so something is happening when we have the magnetic transition. So in some way, the spins start to be more correlated to the vibrations, because sigma square or the U square is somehow related to the vibrations of the bonds. So in somehow there is a phonon coupling. We start to thinking about a kind of spin phonon coupling in this compound below the Niel temperature. Okay, so then we need to check what is happening with the extension integral and then dynamic tensor, which is a very technical detail, and you can see in this paper here. But in the end, we have managed to quantify how much we have the temperature from the Einstein model, which give us an idea of the how strong is this spin phonocopy. So I'm talking about this because if I want to use this material for spintronics, I need to very know what is happening with this kind of coupling. If I can use it, if I can transmit the information using spins or not, depending on how the spins are coupled with the phonos. Okay. And also we discovered that this spin phonocopy is very localized. It's very localized around the nickel oxygen vibrations or surroundings. Okay, if you try to see this same effect for the outer shells, for example, for praseodymium, at the level of the praseodymium nickel interaction, which is around 3.32 angstrom, we cannot see anymore this effect. Okay, so the spin phonocoupling in praseodymium is very localized. So this is how we managed to do this model, okay? And then you use a molecular approximation to determine, and then after to prove how this phonocoupling is changing the Einstein temperature around or at the onset of the magnetic transition, okay? And then this kind of curve for the Einstein temperature with temperature, okay, is very related to the magnetization of the sublattice. So we could combine, for example, the neutron data that we have here in red, and then you can use this neutron data to describe this guy here using this molecular approximation. And then we discovered that this spin phonocoupling is mainly occurring using this EXAFS data because we have an interaction between the phonos from this most symmetric mode in the plane, okay, of the octahedra to the spins, okay. And then we start to investigate what is happening under pressure with this material. And then we discovered, using the ID27 beamline in the SRF, we discovered that we have not only a phase transition under pressure from the orthorhombic to the rhombohedral occurring at 4 or 5 GPa, but we have a coexistence of phases. Okay, we have performed this experiment under quasi-hydrostatic conditions, which means that we discard any effect from strain in the sample. And then we managed to also to quantify how the quantity of phase in this range of coexistence. So this is a new result. Nobody did observe before, and we managed to have this thanks to the very nice spot in the ID27 beamline. So then we continue to explore what is happening under the temperature, but now using the near edge part of the spectrum, and you see here that we map with temperature all these transitions, all these two transitions from the oscillator to metal and then to the metal. And then we have managed to see, okay, we have the same effect occurring at the edge, the pre-edge signal A1, also occurring with the features of the zenith, which is called A2 and A3 and A4. We have the same signal, and we can really understand what is happening with this material using both zenith and both EXAFS part. And then we did the same with the absorption in the BM23 beamline, and you also comparing with the data from diffraction, we really confirm the transitions and also the coexistence. So the main message here is, if you want to really understand locally in the shorthand, in the long range order transition in this material, we need to use this facility available at these two beamlines. And then the conclusion of the work was to provide a very nice pressure temperature phase diagram for this material, where you have here all the transitions occurring at home condition, at home pressure, but with high temperature, low temperature, high temperature, and also the coexistence range here, okay, and also the transition, the dependence of the antiferro magnetic insulator with pressure. Okay, this has work to be submitted very soon. And then I will present very briefly, and if I'm passing the time, Juan, you can just stop me. But we also investigated using synchrotron diffraction very recently these materials for thermoelectrics, which we are working with this in praseodymium. We are working with spintronics, but with cobalt antimony free scuteroids. We want to develop in collaboration with the Madrid the Institute of Sciences and Materials in Madrid thermoelectric compounds, okay, to save energy. For example, if you have a situation that you want, for example, a Peltier system to cool down your material, or if you want to use the energy from, for example, these escapes of the industry, you can install this kind of thermoelectric material. You can use in your body or in some clothes. There are some products now you can install in your clothes. And then you can use this material, but you need to improve the efficiency of the thermoelectric conversion. Okay, so these are a track of all the materials that they have investigated up to now. Okay, and the most interesting thing is this scuterodite, because it's a type N material. You can fill this material with HRFs. And the main advantage of this guy is the low thermal conductivity. So we need to, in the thermoelectric material, to optimize 3 parameters, which are the Seebeck, the electrical conductivity, and the thermal conductivity. So these materials was they were synthesized under pressure using the so-called piston cylinder material, the press, at using moderate temperatures and also pressures of 2 and 3.5. And then we discovered in Madrid that for these scuteroids, you need to use niobium capsules, which is more cheaper than the gold and platinum. Like this, you can save money, and then you can also produce in large scale these new compounds. And then here, there's a result that we have. We have the scuterodite based on cobalt and antimony. And then we managed to put in this void here. This is the octahedra made by cobalt and antimony. Okay, in the middle of this octahedra, there is a void in two-way side, crystallographic side. And then the idea is to, under pressure, induce the filling of these voids. And then we managed to do this using different elements like strontium, potassium, yttrium, all the HRFs. And then we can see here improvements of the Seebeck depending on the elements, and also the reduction of the thermal conductivity. Okay, and then the final result was that we managed to have a figure of merit, which is a thermoelectric figure of merit close to 1, which is very good, by the way. And then the most important thing that we use ALBA, an MSPD beamline, the beamline that I'm working on today. And tomorrow, after tomorrow, there is a seminar of Catalin Pompesco. You show to you all the details, but we have managed to use this beamline to see the phase segregation and also the fraction limit that you can put in these scuteroids. And then we create more or less a model to describe how the lattice parameters evolves with the filling fraction. Not only this, we also could connect the rattling or the vibrations of these HRFs inside the voids and correlate with the thermal conductivity in these materials. Okay, so in this work here, you can see
1 minute, Joao.
Okay, I'm finished. So we managed to see these different filling fractions, and then this was very important for thermal conductivity. So I skip these high pressure results, and then I would like to share with you my collaborators from Madrid, from Grenoble, Olivier Maton, Angélica, Gaston, Mohamed, and people from Alba, Catalin, Francois. Okay, so you have questions we can discuss.
Thank you very much, Joao, for this very nice talk involving a different technique that the one that we observed previously. And someone has any question, please feel free to ask. If not, I have only one basic again the question. Is that you touch now the X-ray absorption spectroscopy, that is a very traditional technique in the synchrotrons. I think it's one of the oldest techniques in that was applied in a synchrotron. In your experience, which are and it involves a different field because it's applied for botanics, for biology, for material science, like you show us here. And which are the requirements that a synchrotron should have to get a nice X-ray absorption beamline?
Normally, you need to a synchrotron need to cover more or less if you want to do in transmission, we need to cover a energy range from 3 or 2 kiloelectrovolts up to 40, something like this, a kiloelectrovolt. And this you need to have a special monochromator with different crystals, okay, to select which range of energy you need. And then before people of the community was thinking that if you use a source like a band magnet or a wiggler, which is the case of the BM23, you have the best condition to have a signal of X-ray absorption. But now in ID24, people from there, Olivier Maton and the staff, they managed to use the undulator source and combine the undulator with the monochromator in a synchronized way. And then like this, the advantage is you can use you can do X-ray absorption traditionally, okay, using the classical, but with very high brightness, and also in a very fast way if your monochromator is very new. So I would say that you now with this new result for ID24, you have the two possibilities, or you can use the wiggler, or you can also now start to think about the high brightness and use the undulator, but you need to synchronize your monochromator with this device, okay, insertion device.
Now, Catalin, you have the word. Huh?
Hey, nice talk.
Catalin.
I have a curiosity. Did you ever think about making Seebeck coefficient measurements under pressure?
Okay. There are some groups that they are developed by special cells, but the thing is you need to put, you need to put, to measure the feedback, you need to have a difference in temperature. So in this figure here, you see my figure, no? So in this figure here, you need to somehow put a resistance here and a second resistance here, but you need to provide different heating rates, no? And then you need to have a really a difference of temperature. So there are some groups in Germany that they are developed this, and nowadays also in Japan, and also it's possible to have this kind of measurements. Okay, but you need the special cells, as I told you with different coatings here, and like this you can isolate and also heat in a different way, because the feedback depend on the difference of temperature. So this is the key point of this kind of measure under pressure.
Well, we can speak in private more after that, I was just... Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Joao. I think we are going to finish the symposium here. I would like to thank all the people that has attended here to the symposium. I would like to thank also the faculty that made possible to have this workshop with the technical suggestions, and Juan Antonio, his director, because he's extending a certificate to all the participants, and the co-organizers, Pedro Fernandez de Córdoba, that is the co-organizer of this symposium, as well to Samuel, Miguel, and Jose, that they were helping to organizing all these symposium. And thank you all very much for being at the end of this symposium. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.